I think, to start with. And for her 104th birthday, she wanted the mayor to sing happy birthday to her. So it got arranged that the mayor brought her to the city council. She had family with her, and they visited with her, which, by the way, she's just a delightful, wonderful person. And spot on. You know, you have to get up pretty early to beat her. Anyway, and the mayor sang. Well, we put that out because we thought it was just such a great moment. It had more hits and more comments than almost anything we've ever put out in our community. And that made me think, I think people would like to see these great events. So let me share with you, it's 4 minutes long. Let me share with you our first, what we're made of. And this, again, I want to thank the IT department, David Woodcock, who does this. There are some things we'll be doing a little bit different, but let me put that on here. Hopefully, I've got Steve Brock here. So
he has lived in Washington City for almost 26 years. He volunteers for Con Days, coaches Little League. You might know him as the barber of Washington City. We would like you to meet Mike Jensen, owner and barber of Mike's Barber and Beauty Shop. Why Washington, Utah?
I grew up in Salt Lake area, and I was changing occupations. I worked for a dairy in Salt Lake and decided I didn't want to work shift work anymore. So I went to barber school. My instructor says, hey, there's a guy in Washington that wants somebody to come and work with him and buy him out. So we've always loved the area. We used to come down here, this area, for Memorial Day. That was our mini vacation every year. So we thought, oh, if I'm changing occupations, might as well. Let's go now.
What's your favorite thing about being a barber?
Mostly it's not work to me. It's something that's fun. And I say I just get to BS all day for a living. One of the really cool things is we get an older clientele too. So it's not just young, it's so there's guys that can tell me about Pearl Harbor because they was there. And they can tell me about the Enola Gay. They were at the airport when the Enola Gay left and told me about those situations. So some of these great men that were in World War II and Korea, they're telling stories about they were there. It's not just history book things. They were actually there. One guy, I had a little shelf with knickknacks on and the stuff that people's brought. One guy, you want a model of the airplane I flew in World War II? So I have that there in my shelf. So to me, that's one of the neatest things is to get to talk to these guys that did awesome things when they were younger, and you would say, yeah, this is what went on. It's not just the history books telling their version. So that's one of the things that stands out.
Having been a barber for 26 years, Mike can tell you all kinds of great stories about our community and what he's seen change over the years, as well as stories from his patrons. But something you might not know about Mike is that the legacy he is leaving. What is really special about Mike is how he is imparting his lifelong skill set, work ethic, and knowledge to the next generation. His son, Josh Jensen.
But it was funny because when he was growing up, they were growing up, and we talk about what do you want to be when you grow up. And so he could always be a barber. And Josh would say, no, I don't want to be a barber. but it was after he worked out in the workforce a little bit in different places and realized that's not too bad. And it just worked out well that he could apprentice with me. And so it's been fun to teach him and to just work with him. We have fun together. So it's fun to be, with your family, and it's fun to be with him. We have a lot of fun. That's why we coach together. We have fun. It's fun being with my kids. And so yeah, it's neat to be able to teach him. And that's probably why I like coaching and stuff, just because you can teach somebody and to see a little guy that has struggled in hitting, and all of a sudden he hits the ball. He's so excited.
Washington City is only as great as those who reside here, who make it great. And this is what we're made of.
So they seem like ordinary lives, but they're extraordinary citizens, and we have 27,000 of them. So that's the endeavor on our part. And so we are really excited about this initiative, and we hope our community will look for these on our social media as they come out, and we'll probably create the process by which members of the community can also say, well, hey, this is a pretty special person if you want that opportunity. So we're pretty excited about that, and so I just want to share that with you.
Thank you, Roger.
I think that's awesome. That's,
Very nice.
I was hoping to bring out Mike has actually been the chairman of our Cotton Days committee, the planning Cotton Days for the last few years too. So we missed that part, but that's awesome, Roger, and IT department. I think that's great.
I think it's great too. When Mike first moved here, Josh was in my class and we became friends immediately. Him being a barber and my father being a barber, we had a lot of things in common and we became friends, and he is truly one of the great people in our community.
I agree. Thank you, and thank you, Roger, for that. We'll move on to item B, introduction of our new Washington City Power Director, Rick Hansen.
Thank you again, Mayor, and I'll have Rick come up. I would like the members of the council, I think I've let a lot of you know when we've had the opportunity, but I certainly want the community to know. As all of you know, Kelly Carlson retired in June of this year. Kelly, of course, kind of birthed our whole power system and raised it, and so we allowed him to go after 30 years when he wanted to, and to go and sit and rock in his rocking chair up at his cabin. We knew that those were big shoes to fill, but we looked around. Rick, let me tell you a little bit about Rick. Rick is an engineer. Rick actually has worked for UAMPS before it was UAMPS. Worked for St. George City for 10 years. 7 years, okay. He's an engineer. He's worked for ICPE Engineering, and he's well known to Washington City. He's done a lot of our capital projects and our engineering services for years. So our staff know him, and our staff was very supportive. As a matter of fact, one of the questions I asked when we were preparing to take applications is why none of the staff had considered applying. And the comment I was getting back is, well, we heard maybe Rick was going to apply, and that's who we would like to see. So we called together the interview board. We did the interview, and we're very pleased to have, we feel very fortunate to have Rick Hansen joining our team here in Washington City, and just seems like a natural fit to us. So here he is, and you can, those of you who didn't get the chance to interview him, I guess you can do it now if you want to.
Be nice. Oh, I'm excited to be here. It's been great for the almost 4 weeks now. So hopefully I won't mess up what Kelly started.
Well, Rick, we welcome you with open arms and hands and minds, and whatever we can do to help, you let us know, and
Will do. Appreciate it.
we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Welcome to Washington City. It's a great place to live and work and to be a part of. We'll move on. Thank you, Roger, for that. Item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Any to declare at this time? Okay, if not, we'll move on to item 4, consent agenda, to approve the minutes of the city council meeting of 8/23/17 and the board audit report for August of 2017. Any questions or comments on those 2 items?
I didn't have any, Mayor. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of August 23rd, 17 and the board audit report.
Thank you. I have a second.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second.
Rick, aye.
Right, aye.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
All right, thank you. Those are approved.
Can we just say appreciate Kimberly being here when I think she doesn't feel very well and probably ought to be home. Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly. Okay, item 5, youth council. It's always a great honor for us to swear in swearing in our new youth city council for the year, and we look forward to working with you and hanging out with you and going to the legislature with you, and maybe eating at a PF Chang's or something up there on the mayor.
Mayor, I'm the
You're the
council
designated.
representative for the youth council. I'll tell you, it's been a real treat to have them or be able to spend time with them. And I enjoyed getting to know all of you this coming year, and hopefully those that have additional years will stay on. In the meantime, Ms. Hardman, we need you to come up, and if you can introduce everybody, that would be awesome.
Okay. First of all, my name is Kate Hardman. I'm the new mayor of the Washington City Youth Council. A lot of these faces are new faces. Some you'll recognize. So I'll invite them, all the new people, to come up and introduce themselves, if that's all right.
Thank you.
I'm Lindsay Salinas, and this is my first year.
Lindsay, where do you go to high school?
I go to Pineview.
Pineview.
Yeah.
And junior, senior?
I'm a junior.
Junior.
And Lindsay's sister graduated. Was it last year or the last year, right? Or the year before? Yep.
Yeah, Irene Salinas.
Thank you.
I'm Emily Seifus, and I'm a senior at Pineview.
Thank you, Emily. Where's your dad?
I don't know, actually. Probably at home.
I'll let him know.
I'm Camber Richardson, and I'm a sophomore at Pineview.
Thank you, Camber.
I'm Kinley Von Cannon, and I'm also a sophomore at Pineview.
Thank you.
I'm Megan Kroll, and I'm also a sophomore at Pineview.
You're not you're all sophomores or juniors or something.
I'm Kirsten Kroll, and I'm a sophomore at Pineview too.
Thank
That's
you.
actually my twin, the one that just.
Hey, I like it.
My name is Miles Gilmore. I'm a junior at Pineview and also the only boy. That's me.
Miles, did I teach you?
I think that's an advantage.
He's grown up since he was in my class.
I'm Sylvia Brown, and I'm a junior at Pineview.
I'm Madison Pay. I'm a senior at Pineview.
I'm Josie Staley, and I'm a junior at Desert Hills.
And who's your uncle? I'm her uncle. She won't say it. I'm mighty proud of her.
Last but not least, I'm Tia Cafferty, and I am a junior at Pineview.
Not last.
I'm Rebecca Hughes, and I'm a sophomore at Pineview.
Very nice.
And Rebecca's my neighbor. Denise, you want to take care of the?
No, let's do the swearing in. Do the swearing in first, and then get a photo of them as the new council.
Okay, so all the new members come forward, please. Yeah. And just line up somewhere along here.
I, Jared Cafferty,
Do solemnly swear.
do solemnly swear
That I will support, obey, and defend.
that I will support, obey, and defend
The Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of Utah.
and the Constitution of the State of Utah.
I do also solemnly swear.
I do also solemnly swear
That I will support, obey, and defend.
that I will support, obey, and defend
The laws and ordinances of Washington City.
the laws and ordinances of Washington City,
And that I will discharge the duties.
and that I will discharge the duties
Of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You guys are probably gonna need to bunch in a little bit.
Before I get up there.
and say maybe while they're getting their picture taken, I'll take the opportunity to tell you a little bit about their great advisors. We've got 2 great advisors who work with them, and Carmen Snow and Sherry Reeder. And so we certainly appreciate what they've done for our youth councils over the years. And it's exciting to see this group grow. And we're now into about our 5th year of youth council, I believe.
We're in our seventh year.
Holy cow, time flies when we're having fun. So, but it's been great to be associated and to watch these young people learn about our community and become involved in city events and city government. And hopefully someday we'll see some of them sitting up on these stands.
Okay, don't forget to sign.
Just your name.
I have a message from Carmen, actually. She wishes she could be here. She told me that, but I don't think it's true because she's in New York having a good time. But she wanted me to announce our theme, which is "Oh, the Places You'll Go." And we're kind of hoping that that will not only carry through like our service in the community, but that we can also take that with us through our lives and that we can serve wherever we go.
I am Rachel Pryor. I'm the city manager, and I just wanted to announce that we are doing the haunted house this year again at the Covington Mansion on Halloween, and the youth council members will be there dressed up as zombie of the Covington family. So
Covington family zombie version. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's So
Mayor, my charge to you is to memorize that Dr. Seuss book.
Okay, I will. I will do that.
And then at the end of your term, you'll have to pass, you're going to have to memorize that.
All right, I'll do that.
How many of you are familiar with that Dr. Seuss book? If you're not familiar with it, get it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And have fun this year. Have a lot of fun and make it a memorable experience, not only for yourself, but for us too. So, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 6. Yeah, you can be excused, and parents too if you want. I know these city councils are riveting. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, proclamation. I'd like to read this proclamation. October is going to be a domestic violence awareness month, and we have a proclamation we'd like to share and read to you about that. Whereas it is a basic human right to live a life free from violence and abuse, and whereas domestic violence is a serious problem that occurs in all cultures, and does not discriminate by age, gender, social class, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. And whereas 1 in 3 women in Utah will experience partner violence in their lifetime. And whereas every year approximately 80 Utah children witness the murder or attempted murder of their mother. And whereas domestic violence related homicides in Utah have accounted for 42% statewide for the last 16 years. And whereas it is the role of local government to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. Now, therefore, I, Kenneth Nielsen, Mayor of Washington City, Utah, do hereby proclaim October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the city of Washington and invite all residents to learn how they can help, because domestic violence affects us all. In witness thereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause to be affixed the seal of the great city of Washington, Utah, on this 27th day of September, 2017. Is Lainey here? Would like to invite Laney up to give us a brief overview of what's going on. Good to see you.
You too. Thank you, Mayor, for having us. I'm Lindsay Boyer. I'm the Executive Director of Dove Center. I'm here with Laney and two of our board members. And we also have the Washington City Police Department Victim Advocate with us to show support for the importance of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This is a critical issue in what is an otherwise very safe state and place to live. Unfortunately, Utah rates of domestic violence exceed the national average, and it is a real problem here, a private form of violence. And so we want to do all that we can to spread awareness, to help our communities understand how to identify the issues, how to seek help, resources that are available, and how to help others, and to stand up against domestic and dating violence for our community, our families, and then for our youth as well. We have a whole month full of activities going on that are going to promote this awareness, and then a couple of things I'm going to have some of our other members here talk about. But I wanted to just leave a thought with you that in our state in 2016, we as a state as a whole lost 22 members of our state to domestic violence related fatalities. And already this year, in only 3/4 of the year, we have already reached 28 fatalities. And that is just not acceptable in our books. So we want to invite everyone to join us in being a part of the solution and to supporting our efforts to raise awareness around this very critical issue.
Thanks, Lindsay.
My name is Shoni Christensen. I am a board trustee member for the Dove Center and also a local Allstate insurance agent. Allstate Foundation has a Purple Purse program, which is a fundraiser against domestic violence, and the Dove Center will be participating in that. So on behalf of the funds that we hope to raise in October for Purple Purse, we are presenting you all with Purple Purse charms. I don't know what you gentlemen are going to do with them, but I hope that you'll read the stories. On the back of each of these is a card. It's actually a real life story of somebody that the foundation has helped throughout the nation, that has been benefited from this particular program. And just as a quick explanation, purple obviously is the color for awareness for domestic violence. And so the Purple Purse, if you think about it, the purse holds a woman's power, really. It holds her identification, it holds her funds, and sometimes her keys to her car if she has access to transportation. So that's why we use the purse as our symbol. So we'll present these. If you don't mind, I'll hand these up. And we just invite you we just invite you to, as leaders in our community, to help spread the word as we raise those funds and have an opportunity to have matching funds from the Allstate Foundation with what we raise in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you letting us come and
State
share
your name
this.
for the record.
Oh, my name is Laney Larson. I am director of, you know me.
I know, Laney. I know.
I'm director of development at Dove Center, and we appreciate you letting us come and make this announcement. We just recently, Aaron Kimball Foundation shut its doors, and we have taken under our wing and adopted their transitional housing program. And so as a kind of new member of your city, we wanted to come and just help you to be aware of what it is that we're doing and how we're trying to help people in our community and in your city as well. So the why behind the Purple Purse with the financial is that there, you know, a lot of people always say, well, why doesn't she just leave? Why doesn't the victim leave? And a lot of times it's that financial abuse that prevents them because they don't have the resources. So we're excited to get behind this with the Allstate Foundation, and we're excited to have our community support survivors that are around us and help to make our cities in this area stronger. So thank you for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Two more really quick things. One, I just wanted to thank Tammy, who is the victim's advocate who serves Washington City and who has for, I'm not sure how many years? Okay. She's been a great partner, and she does a lot of great work for Washington City and its residents. And so I want to thank her, and we would love to get a photo with you if at all possible.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll mention too while they're getting that photo. So the victim advocate, there's two of you? There's two of them that work, and their offices are just as you go into the police department. They're off to the left, right there off the lobby, and they do a fantastic work for us.
Mayor, if you wait, let Steve get a picture of you, bro.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, ladies, very much. We appreciate you coming. If you see that happening, let's get rid of it. Let's report it and get rid of it. We don't need that in our community. We don't need it in our nation and in our world. Item 7, special event. Consideration to ratify a special event application for the Pineview High School Homecoming Parade held September 20th at 7 p.m. Is the applicant here? I don't think so. We just needed to do some housekeeping cleanup, I think, on that one.
Mayor, since the parade already went off and it was a great parade, we'll ratify this one post haste. That I'll make the motion that we ratify the special event application for Pineview High School's homecoming parade that was held on September 20th at 7 p.m. and appreciate them coming to our community and being a part of our community with their homecoming parade. It makes it fun for all of us.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion and second.
Granger, aye.
Billis and I.
Nice night.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. Now we can all rest easy about that parade. Item 8, bid awards. Consideration to award the bid for the Veterans Park Project. Leisure Services Director Barry Blake.
Hello, Mayor and council members. We just finished our second round of bid process for the Veterans Park, and had the bid opening yesterday, and we had no bidders. We had 3 companies come in and take plans, 2 locally and 1 from up north. The 2 locally, just too busy. They can't do it, which is good for the local economy. There's a lot of work that's going on right now, and they just couldn't do it. And then the 1 from up north emailed us on Monday night. The opening was Tuesday. He emailed me Monday night and said he was unable to get a bid bond for that project, so he wasn't able to bid also. So we come before you to make the recommendation that we now go forward as a city to finish that project ourselves.
So real quick, just to remind the council, under the state statute, you can go out to bid twice, and if either the bids are not accepted, meaning they're either excessive or they didn't meet the requirements or whatever, or you didn't get bids. And after the second bid process, the council can determine the appropriate way to proceed without having to do that. And so I think Barry's going to recommend what we would like to recommend to the council in order to proceed forward.
Generally, there's not a specific way. They indicate that the city should do it in an appropriate manner for that city. We at Public Works, this runs into it on not a regular basis, but from time to time they run into this. And in that case, we can go out and discuss and negotiate individually with folks that we know do this stuff. But Barry, I think, probably has some ideas how he'd like to proceed with it. But again, the intent is to get the lowest price we can to get the job done.
I actually met with Mike Shaw today, took him the plans, and we went over those together today. We would like to start as soon as Monday. Alliance would set a benchmark for that area, so we know the elevations there. And Andy from the Public Works Department, who's an excellent employee and does so much, would start doing the grubbing and clearing of that area where the demolition has been done, and then we would put in utilities and the footings for the bathroom and the pavilions, and then we relocate the irrigation line would be one of the first things to happen. It would just be relocated and just go straight through instead of clear around in the ditch. And then we would like to make sure we have the road base in there and have it all cleaned up and really looking nice for Veterans Day, before Veterans Day, which is just a little over a month away. So that's how we'd like to start. And as we go along with that, we would get prices, contacts and subcontractors and those who can build and get some prices in from them and choose the best prices and get moving on this project. We looked at the schedule. We're on our own doing that. We think it will be about a 6-month project, from the 1st of October to March is when we will look at probably getting that done. So, our recommendation to move
Do you
forward.
anticipate as you get those sub bids that those would come back before council on those types of projects?
Well, and this situation makes it nice because we can actually visit with them and say, you know, we can negotiate, we can talk to different companies and
You can divide up this separate.
and kind of work that.
The separate parts of the,
so-
of the project, which you typically can't do with the entire
Yeah.
bid that comes in.
But to answer your question, Councilman, it's really up to you. I mean, sure, we can. And we talked about that, as a matter of fact, about as we get the subcontract. And again, we're not sure how many we're going to get. We're not sure how more competitive a lot of those will be. And like I said, some of the work we'll do in-house now, and we have that capability to do that both with time and resources. But we're certainly comfortable bringing those back to the council to share with them. Sure.
I would like to see some of the bigger, like our concrete work that's going to be pretty substantial. Some of that stuff that's going to be fairly costly, I think would be appropriate to kind of bring back to council.
In visiting with Mike Shaw, we can do the concrete work in-house.
Oh.
So that,
Well, if we do
so
that type of stuff, then
really the only things that will be left there, and we'll do also the power, we'll do the trenching, everything for the power, all the utilities. Most utilities are right there. We just have to make sure they're in the right place. So it's just a matter of a little bit of work there, all the way through the grading and the road base and concrete work. Those footings have to be put in ahead of time, which we can also do. And then when that's all done, we will have to have somebody do the bathroom. We'll have to get a contractor for the bathroom, and then a contractor for the erection of the pavilion and the outdoor kitchen. Those will be, we already have some prices on those already from the bid process, but we will also get some local and get some prices from them before we make our decision.
Did you have a cost estimate?
We did have $420,000 for the whole. It's been approved.
Is it the same now? Do you anticipate doing it this way? There'll be a savings?
Yeah, it would be this. It would be close to the same. Whatever savings we can do, we will certainly try.
We're hoping, since so much of the stuff is going to be handled in-house, that will be the case. But the nice thing is the projects that look like we'll be contracting out are still kind of in the latter stage. So that gives us plenty of time to get those prices and get back to the council with those and let you look them over. You know, we hope, again, the sub-market is really what drives the developer market out there, and we know it's problematic. So, but this is probably gives us the best opportunity to get the most savings.
Well, we need to start quickly, so we'll try to get with people in the next few days and start getting plans out to them and get prices. So hopefully in a couple weeks, maybe we can even come back and give you some prices. So.
Get to cut out that piece for the Lions Club.
We had still sitting there. I went like that today.
I was
It's going to be
reminded
difficult
last
because
week.
it's got rebar and everything
Yeah,
run to it. So we might have to.
That's what I told them.
Do some sign.
If you can.
But we'll make sure we have it.
thanks, Barry. Appreciate your, like I said, this has been quite a process.
It's been.
Bid
has
it.
been.
But,
It'll be a challenging thing, but it'll be fun to do.
I think
And
it'll be a great asset to our community when that park's redone. It'd be
and we'll
nice
make
to
sure
have
it's
a
done
nice
right.
Facility there for our community events for years and years to come. So look forward to that.
So where do we go from here? Do we just need to get a,
Well, I think at this point, we'll have you write up kind of a schedule,
Okay.
who's doing what, then let's begin working on those
okay,
bids.
so we'll proceed then. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Do you need council approval of this?
Probably need councils, well, there is no bid, so, what's on the bid? Yeah, what's that, what do we got on the agenda?
It was just awarded bid, so there was no.
We could just have to make a motion to approve moving forward with our bid. If there was no bids and we can move forward as a city, that'd be appropriate.
Well, then I'll make a motion that, since there were no bids, that we allow the city to move forward on the project.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Nice night.
Ellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Barry. Item B, consideration to award the bid on the relay panels for the Parkway substation. Power Director Rick Hansen.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Fortunately, we didn't have that problem on ours, so. But it is a challenge right now. So the first item is for the relay panels. We received 2 bids. We had sent out more than that, but only had 2 responses. So that same kind of problem exists in lots of areas. The 2 bidders were Instrument Control Company and Specialty Electric. And as you can see, I think you have it in your packets. The bids were less than $400 apart.
Yeah, that's tight bid.
And we've used both of them, or personal experience on previous employment. And so we recommend that the bid be awarded to the low bidder, Intermountain Control Company, for $62,117.40.
Do you feel like because there's so few bidders that the bids are coming in higher?
No, this is about what we had expected. There's 3 relay panels, and as a rule of thumb, we use between 20 and 25,000 a panel, so it fell within what we had expected.
Well, in addition to that, they got the warranty's almost 5 times as long too.
Correct. And there's manufacturer warranties on the relays that we're using that they state 10 years, but actually it's pretty much a lifetime warranty on the relays that we're using in these subs. Any other questions?
Any additional questions for Rick on this part of the project?
In the absence of further discussion, I'll make some motion that we approve or award the bid on the relay panels for the Parkway substation to Instrument Control Company in the amount of $62,117.40.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ellis and I.
Nice night.
Turek, aye.
All right, that's approved. Thanks, Rick. We'll move on to item C, consideration to award the bid on the steel structures for the Parkway substation. Our Director Rick Hansen.
Yes, again, in your packet, we received 3 bids on this, and the 2 low bidders were less than $1,000 apart on that one. And unfortunately, one of our local suppliers was in 3rd place. It would have been nice to be able to use them, but there is 2 components. There's the base bid, which is for what would be required for what we're doing in the first bay. We also put out an alternate to get the steel structures for the future second bay, and those pricing, the prices for that came in. Pardon? Sure.
Excuse me, is that all right?
Yeah, it's not.
It's not, yeah.
I looked at that.
So, okay, very good.
We had looked into that. So anyway, to get the structures for the future second bay, it's another $23,000. Feel like it's within the budget, and I would recommend that we award both components. So that way it's we're further along for that future bay. And if you elect to go that route, we would recommend the steel structures be awarded to Clutie for $124,125.
So there's a time component that the other Stoddard Steel is half the time for
Correct.
delivery at less than 1,000. Is there a reason to consider them based on the delivery time?
We looked at that, and to be quite honest, we had the pre-bid meeting today for the actual construction with the construction contractors. We anticipate at the second meeting in October to award that, come before you to award that. And so by the time they get the foundations in and ready, the 16 weeks should not cause a problem. They'll be here first of the year, and that's about when the contractor will need them. In fact, getting them in 8 weeks might almost cause some problems. We'd almost get them too early for what we'd anticipated. So.
With any other discussion? With no other discussion, I'd make a motion to award the bid on the steel structures for the Parkway subdivision to Clutie Incorporated for $124,125.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Nice and I.
Ellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
All right, thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Item 9, resolution, consideration to approve a resolution approving the form of the lease/purchase agreement with, is that Zions Bank, NA, Salt Lake City, Utah, and authorizing the execution and delivery thereof. City Manager.
Did that just go in? Oh, okay. We were looking to see that was in your packet, and for some reason it wasn't, but Denise just dropped it there. But this is basically the lease purchase agreement of the approved. It was budgetarily approved as the bucket truck for the power department. And so let me just go over the details just for the council. This is just the lease purchase portion of that, which is the indebtedness portion, and it requires to come before council. So basically, it's the amount of $245,313 is the principal. It's for 5 years, which makes annual payments of $52,742.06 at an interest rate of 2.46%. And so staff would recommend approval of the lease purchase.
You want to give us those figures one more time so we can include those in our motion?
Yes, the total amount, principal amount, $245,313 for 5 years at an interest rate of 2.46%.
If there's no other discussion, I would make the motion that we approve the resolution of a lease purchase agreement with Zions Bank for our new power bucket truck for $245,313. That's at 2.46% over a 5-year period.
I'll second that one.
A motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ellis and I.
Nice and I.
Turek, aye.
All right, that's approved. Thank you, City Manager. Item 10, preliminary plat. Consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Lakeside Stuckey Farms, located approximately 5,000 south, Stuckey Farm Parkway. Applicant Carl Larson.
Give us a second here, Mayor, and we'll bring as stated, the applicant is requesting approval for the preliminary plat for Lakeside at Stuckey Farms. This applicant is proposing 51 lots, and the area coverage for the subdivision will be 23.03 acres. The zoning designation at this location is the Stuckey Farms PCD, Planned Community Development, and the surrounding zoning is, of course, Stuckey Farms PCD to the northeast, south, and west. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates at this location. Staff's reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions that the preliminary plat is outlined. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the preliminary plat and reviewed it at their September 6th, 2017 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for, and I'm sorry that should not say Ladera, but it should say Lakeside at Stuckey Farm subdivision, based on the findings and subject to the conditions. And we did have just a few things that we noted, specifically condition number 12. And this is from the Public Works Department. The special consideration needs to be given with the geotechnical investigation. Specific details need to be established for the proposed lake construction and surrounding future home construction. So Public Works Department, just because of things they've seen in the past, a little bit concerned. This will be a particular, this area is a lake, thus the name of Lakeside. They just want to make sure that special attention is given as this lake portion is built out, and especially the homes that'll be on the perimeter there on the west and the north side of that. So
can you give us some ideas of what the specific details are that the geotechnical report will include?
Well, Lester's not here, so no, I can't give those to you. It's just that he wanted to make sure that it, in the conditions, that it is, that attention is just drawn, that, you know, that the geotechnical investigation and recommendation is followed very tightly and well. He's just has heard and seen in the past of, you know, developments that have come forth like this, and then some troubles that have happened because there wasn't a lot of attention given. So he just is wanting to make sure that's out on the record and in the condition that be looked at. So I wish I knew specifically, and he is not here tonight.
You know, what kind of ground is under that lake? Is it, does it have gypsum in it? Is it clay?
You know, I'm not sure. I mean, there will be a geotechnical report that's done, but that will come at construction drawing times. You know, that particular, when we get to that phase of the development part of it, those things will come in, and they are looked at that time.
You know if it'll be a bladdered lake, or is it just, you know that? No.
I'm not sure. Mr. Larson's here. He might be able to answer what they tentatively think that might be. And I don't know if his engineer is here, but I do know I saw Carl sitting back there. So I'd probably divert that to him and see what, if he has any knowledge, or maybe his engineer is here or representative.
That's not necessary for me. Am I correct in understanding that they have their own wells?
Yes,
to feed this lake? It's not city water?
This won't be city water. They do have quite a bit of water available to them. They even consider doing their own irrigation system for a lot of their residents, maybe at a future date as well. And what talk has been had, and hopefully plans might go forward with that. Anything else I can answer for you, or something to answer for you in this case?
I'd like to hear from the applicant, so.
Okay.
Carl Larson, Stuckey Farms, and I'm willing to answer any questions that I'm capable of. So,
well, he brought up the lake. Are you? Is it lined? Are you? I mean, how are you? Because that's fairly sandy out there.
it is. It's very sandy. In fact, in preparing for this over the last 3 or 4 years, I've actually filled that particular lake about 4 times now. And the reason for that is to help the compaction. As you know, most of you understand that water is typically used for compaction whenever you've got collapsible soil. So that's one of the things that we've done. The other thing that we're doing, though, is we realize that we have to have more studies done. We started doing studies a little over 1.5 years ago with our engineers, and I've actually brought down a specialist in lakes with civil science from the Salt Lake area, that's their specialty. And so we're looking at all of their recommendations very closely. As you said, we've basically got 2 ways to mitigate that. You can either use a clay material to line the lake, or you can use a impervious material liner. There's lots of different names for it, but we will do it at their recommendation. One of the things that we're very aware of is that we also want to take into consideration how fast it dissipates and different things. And we will also, in doing our determinations, in working with the Public Works, and I've talked to Lester extensively about that, and I think some with Mike even in the past, a certain percentage of our lakes will be left what's called freeboard, so that it will also act as storm detention area. So we'll be able to take quite a bit of any storm runoff in the southern end of the property into these particular lakes. They will all be tied together with a pumping system so that they will be flowing, so we don't run into the problems that you run into with standing water. But also we will be using those lakes as storage for our irrigation system to pump out of the lakes to irrigate the properties around it, both open space and the residences. One of the things that we're doing right away in the planning of Lakeside is to feel this is preliminary plat on the whole thing, but we're not coming in right away asking for approval for our first phase to be right up next to the lake. It will actually go to the east, away from the lake, to give us a chance to work the soil, to do all of our investigation that's required with the engineers to make sure that it works. But that way it gives us an opportunity to move closer to the lake as we go. There'll be 10 lots in the first phase, and they will all be to the east of the lakes. There will be still some excavation that will be necessary there, and part of one of the big things that we are aware of and very cognizant of safety around lakes, and whether it's and that's one of our concerns, making sure that we shape those properly, making sure that we've got the ability for people to get out if they should have problems. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. We understand that, and it's very important to us to take care of them properly.
Who's going to retain ownership of the lake after it builds out? Will it be retained by Stuckey Farm, or will it be common property in the property association?
It will be part of our overall common area, and in general, each one of our villages have a separate master or separate association, and then we have a separate master association that's over everything as far as the common. So they will be part of that, so that the usage can be with the people that are within the development too.
Thank you.
How much higher will the home be than the lake as far as feet?
That will be at the recommendation of the engineers, of course, but I would estimate that be 5 to 7 feet.
So the lake, are you planning, I mean, a lot of the lakes around town, they're for fishing, or are you planning recreation in the sense that you can have people swimming? Because I guess I've probably got a couple of concerns. One is you want to make sure it's not stagnant, so you got to control the insects. Back east, there's a requirement that any ponds or whatnot are stocked, so that will help control. But we just got the mosquito abatement program that you might want to look into working with them just to make sure that we don't create an issue there.
I agree. I've already had conversations with them, and very much agree that we need to bring them on board. We're hoping that I've talked to a few different fishermen. I've said, we'll provide the lake if you help
You want to stock it.
take care of it. And we'd even help stock it, but we'd like to, we've got all kinds of people telling me those lakes are deep enough for trout. And some say, no, we need to have bass in those. So
Let the kids in there chasing them around.
right.
How deep will the lake be?
They will be anywhere from about 17 to 18 feet deep generally. And the reason for that is exactly what Councilman Billiston said, is you need to have them a little bit deeper to allow for fish.
And then 10, 20 years down the road, it could be dredged.
I don't think I'll be here, but
But I just mean
Well,
it will,
let's hope you are.
I think there will be silt will build up in it.
you know, I believe it will to a certain extent, but not very much, because a good percentage of, but there will always be some silt. And yes, there will be ability to get into those to take care of it. We're also going to put some protection areas down in the bottom of the lakes for the hide and shade up and things like that. So
Do you anticipate kayaks, paddle boards?
we do.
Canoes?
We anticipate kayaks, paddle boards, canoes, and we anticipate that some people will be, if they want to, be able to have their own small dock that would go out to the lake. So,
What about concessions along the beach?
excuse me,
Concessions?
concessions along the lake, I don't plan on that. No,
Lemonade stands, maybe.
if you've got a daughter or a son that wants to come do lemonade stand, they're welcome.
They're also mothballs.
You're gonna have a little green out there that I can chip onto, you know, with a floating golf ball or
He's
something.
got plenty of turf out there.
Yeah, I've got dirt.
You ready?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
Ready.
Thank you.
Propose,
Thanks, Carl.
propose approval of the preliminary plat for Lakeside at Stuckey Farms at approximately 5,000 South Stuckey Farm Parkway.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second.
Rick, aye.
Nice night.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Maybe I.
Thank you. That is approved. Move on to item B, consideration to approve a preliminary plat for the 8th at Coral Canyon, located approximately 2100 North Coral Canyon Boulevard, applicant Cole West Home, excuse me. And I need to be excused just for a little bit, so.
Thank you, Mayor.
We'll let Mayor
Pro
Pro
Tem.
Tem Turek take over.
As stated, the applicant's requesting approval for the preliminary plat for the 8th at Coral Canyon. This applicant is proposing 22 lots on the area coverage is 4.72 acres. Zoning at this particular location is the Coral Canyon Planned Community Development, referred to as the PCD. It also has associated vacation rental use as well on this particular project. Surrounding zoning is the Coral Canyon PCD to the north, south, east, and west. This proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision regulations and other ordinances. Staff reviewed the request and recommended approval to the Planning Commission. They reviewed it at their September 6th meeting. The Planning Commission, by a vote of 3-1, recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the 8th at Coral Canyon subdivision. And that's based on the findings subject to the conditions. And there were a few extra conditions on this. The driveways for each unit start at number 12. The first 11 are the standard. For each unit need to maintain a minimum distance of 20 feet in length. And again, that's for parking needs. And then number 13, there will be,
Is that no
it should say no parking. And I'm, because usually I put that in bold. So there will be no parking. We can, on the street, other than the assigned parking stalls that are provided. And as you can see, there are some of those at the angled parking, but the rest of the street, and it is a private street, and because of its size, the fire marshal and or other codes want to make sure we don't have any additional cars sitting out there in the way. So there will have to be those signs placed throughout the development. And that's the 2 extra conditions on that. I'll be glad to answer any questions the council might have on the 8th at Coral Canyon
So
preliminary
most
plat.
of those are regular parking except for your areas 4 that are the deeper, or area 4.
And I'm not sure your question, what,
This area right there.
yeah, I'm sorry. Area 4 is the boat,
Right.
toy, extra parking place. Yes.
And those are the dimensions that we discussed.
Yeah, they meet the
Weeks ago.
criteria. Everything will be according when the plans come in. That'll meet that standard that you adopted, that we amended the Coral Canyon, that street design standard recently.
It'd be awkward right there on the entry going in, coming off the main road. If you're trying to back a boat in and park it and clogging the entry, now you've got somebody backed out on the main road trying to pull in.
Probably what I would imagine happen, they're going to come in, hit this T, back it, head out like they're heading back out, get out of ways, and then bring it in. That way is going to be really the only or the best way to do that. So, but for leaving, it'll sure be nice.
Well, yeah, sure for leaving, but even so, to get in and then get turned around so you can go and back your rig into that spot. But in the act, as you're backing your rig in, you're blocking off the entry.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a better way that can be laid out, or a better place for it.
There was a question on this about setback, property line, not the curb. Was that addressed?
Well, they have put dimensions on. They have put, that each one of these driveways will be 20 feet. Now I made note that
Now, there's one here showing 15.
there is an updated one. This is not, I just zoomed in on it. There is one that does have the 20 feet. I've got that. They're full aware, but I made reference, and again, this particular area, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is going to be the most difficult when you add, because those ones that were 15 feet now have to go 5 feet. When you push 1 and 2 back 5 feet, and then you push 5 and 6 toward 1 and 2 5 feet, it could, I just told them they need to be fully aware of that, and they.
6 right now is showing 10 feet.
Well, it's like I say, I don't know why, but there is an updated version, and it is 20 feet. They put it on. They didn't
Well, if
per
there's
se
an
fix
if
the
there's
thing.
an updated version of the preliminary plat, can we get it, or can we table until we get it?
That's totally up to you. Absolutely, it is. Again, I'm not sure why this one ended up. There is.
What Commissioner Coates was the nay vote. Do you know his concerns? Was it over this parking?
I think it had issues to do with this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and what's that?
Oh,
Okay, and that was talked about in our meeting, but yeah, that was talked about, and again, we'll leave that up to Public Works on what the accident management plan is per se on that. So I know the distance between was going to be close, but I think Lester's laid it out, and it was either right at it.
Well, for me, I'd like to see that RV section reworked, and I'd like to see the updated preliminary plat before I go ahead and approve it. Or recommend approval.
My eyes aren't that good, but on lot number 1, is that a 10-foot setback on the driveway also?
Well, that's what it's saying, but they've been told it has to be 20 feet. It has to be 20 feet for number 1, for number 6, 11, 13, 17 were the ones that were, when the plan first came in, they had it at 10, and we told them that every driveway has to have 20 feet.
Well, in the back, as you were pointing out, if they make the driveways as long as they're supposed to be, then they're crowding into the center there. What's the setback there? Is it 10 feet?
Well, between
20.
buildings are, we don't let them get any closer than 10 feet next to another building. Like in our PUDs, we're doing common areas and buildings, we don't allow them to get any closer than 10 feet. It's because the building code comes into effect that you can't have them closer than that. So that's what I was saying, when you push number 1 and 2 back 10 feet, 5 and 6 back, you can't move number 3 and 4 because you can see that dotted line that runs right next to 4. That's the boundary and the limit, and they're right on it. So again, when number 1 and 2, 5 and 6 come back 10 feet each.
What's the setback off of Coral Canyon Boulevard?
It should be 20 feet. But again, there's a landscape strip and other things that are out there as well off of the property line. So it's actually going to be, in essence, more than that.
Can you have them add that onto the preliminary plat too? Because I'm not seeing it. I see the 90-foot right of way for Coral Canyon Boulevard, but I'm not seeing, it looks like the setback's a lot shorter than that. And same with along the SR9 exit.
Is there any other discussion that you want to have with it? Councilman Belliston's kind of voiced his opinion. You want to go?
It's difficult to prove something we can't actually see.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we table this to the next meeting and let the applicant address some of those issues.
Okay, we have a motion for a table by Councilman
I'll
Belliston.
second it.
Second by Councilman Nyson.
Maybe I.
Ranger, aye.
Nice night.
Turdick, aye. That is tabled to our next meeting in two weeks. October 11th. Okay, that'll be our October 11th meeting. All right, item 10C, consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Majestic Hills located approximately at Noble Drive, south of Galilee Heights. Applicant Casey Clark Company.
As stated, it's a request for another preliminary plat, Majestic Hills. This particular subdivision is proposing 22 lots, and the area coverage is 11.45 acres. This particular location is a single-family residential, 15,000 square foot R115 zoning designation. The surrounding zoning to this project is R115 to the north and west, open space to the south, which is the debris basin, and also open space to the east. The preliminary plat approval request is in following up the recently approved zone change of the R115 to this particular parcel. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other ordinances at this location. Staff reviewed and requested a recommendation of approval. The Planning Commission reviewed it through a public hearing on August 16th, 2017, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for Majestic Hills subdivision onto the City Council. And they did have just a few extra items other than the standard 11. I'll just read those starting at number 12. A 20-foot no-build area easement needs to be placed on the north end of lots 7 and 8 to accommodate for off-site drainage. 13, a 16-inch water line needs to be shown in the 3650 South Street. 14, a future 15-inch sewer line needs to be shown on the south side of 3650 South Street. 15, approval of modifications of the existing easements will be required from both the canal company as well as the flood control authority prior to construction drawings being approved. Number 16, the plat submitted shows grading on property east of the subdivision boundary. All grading needs to remain on the proposed subdivision unless easements are obtained from the adjoining property owner or owners. And number 17, all utilities need to be stubbed to adjacent properties. And those are just the extra ones we wanted to have put on the plat, but Lesser was fine recommending to go forward as long as those things get taken care of on there.
When when these are submitted, can we, I don't know how this was submitted, but it's so digitized, it's really hard to read. Can you, I mean, I know they can output it electronically and it comes up pretty clear. You can blow it up and see everything.
Well, one of the issues this one's actually more clear than a lot of them. You'll notice a lot of them end up with words that end up being face forward, and they're also showing a mirror image of a backwards, and it's because we found out in the computer programs going from whatever they're using, ending up what our system then reads it as and puts it down in that.
No, but they can, I understand, but they can output in PDF pretty easy, and then you've got a PDF rather than something that's scanned at fax quality, and when you blow it up, you can't. Like, I can't read measurements on here. I can't read the numbers for measurements.
Which ones are you struggling? Or they're, because most of these come through an electronic version that's sent in, and then we just shift them over to you. We're not, at least I don't know if they're this one, but all our other ones, I know that it's sent. That's how, at least when Kathy gets them from the developers for our applications, they're sent to us electronically.
Screen over the vicinity map. Down from that. Can't see any of that.
The vicinity maps.
You want to know where it is? I'll bring it up
I know
on
where, I know
okay.
where it is. I mean, that's one of the first things I look for. But you know, some of the other numbers, by the time you blow it up, it's easier to see when it's small than it is to blow it up and see. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, we'll keep working with them. We're trying to improve, like I say, the quality each, and like I say, this one's better than most of the ones we've had. Again, we end up with some that have a blue tint that's always on there that they can't seem to get rid of. There's lots of things that happen depending on, again, all of them have different programmings or how they send them over. That's why we also make sure that we have everything in a hard copy paper that's always in the file as well.
Any other discussion for Drew?
My only question is on the zoning. It says it was a follow-up to the recently approved R115 zoning, and R15 is what's around this piece to the northwest, open space.
Well, I kind of gave that to you. There's R115 to the north and west, and open space to the south. The south is the gypsum.
Okay, the debris basin.
Debris basin. And then to the east, which is over here on this side, it's open space right now, but it's given a very low density category, so it'll come in as an R115.
Okay.
If I remember right. But those folks, we actually have this development, and then you've done a zone change. There's a gap in between, and those were a commercial, neighborhood commercial, and then right above up there that ties in with Villa Toscana.
Who's responsible to keep that debris basin looking decent?
We are.
Flood Control Authority.
Flood control, and partly, yeah, there's a few hands that are tied in that.
Yeah, the Flood Control Authority has major debris basin down there. That's how we formed that.
You also know they put in
In fact, Mike, that's one that they're currently working on right now, right?
if that power line system went in, that is that Rocky Mountains, Mike, or is it Dixie's? You'll notice quite a few new poles right through there as well, that they put in a new substation and then subsequent lines, and some big steel poles have all been added along there all the way over to Washington Fields Road and then heading north. So, that Dixie did.
Barring any further discussion, I go ahead and make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for Majestic Hills located approximately at Noble Drive, south of Galileo Heights.
Motion for approval by Councilman Belliston, seconded by Councilman Ivy.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Night's night.
Turek, aye. Move to item 11, final plat. Consideration to approve the final plat for Ladera at Sienna Hills, Phase 1, located at approximately Redstone Road and Sandy Talus Drive. Applicant Brennan Holdings, number 200 LLC.
Thank you. As stated, the applicant's requesting approval of the final plat for Phase 1 of Ladera. This particular phase of the subdivision is proposing 30 lots. The area coverage is 6.41 acres. The zoning is under the Sienna Hills PCD, Planned Community Development. The preliminary plat was approved back on June 28th earlier this year. Staff's reviewed the request proposal, and the proposed final plat conforms to the approved preliminary plat. And the Planning Commission reviewed the request at their September 6th meeting. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the final plat for the Ladera at Sienna Hills Phase 1 subdivision. And there was one extra condition, and it's been put in, and it was that the trail that was required over here in this particular open space, and you can see that trail now. It's been on. Mr. Raines brought in that updated, and you can see the trail is the trail right there that's part of the Sienna Hills Master Trail, and hopefully become part of ours. We were still deciding if that was in the area that part of the trails we're going to take over, but it is on the plat now.
Well, that was my question. The trail dedication, we haven't decided whether it's going to be deeded to the city or to the property owners?
What we like to do is wait till after it's built, and then if it isn't up to our standards and doesn't want to be, then we don't accept it.
Does that limit other people's ability to use that if it were owned by?
No, but I mean, as it comes to a public scenario, if it came to a point and we did not accept it for whatever reason, then they could have the right within their planned community development to say these are only for our residents. It would then be private trails. That would be the case. That worst case scenario.
Well, let's
Couldn't
make sure
we
it
make
lives
that a
up to our
part of this, that
standard.
they're actually built to our spec and standard?
Well, we've got that on here, and this is what the note is, but and they will be. I mean, the intention is to do that, but we don't want to accept it on this plat until we see the product. And then it will be accepted and then brought into us. We have trails in Coral Canyon and in Sienna Hills that have been brought to you. It's just the trails as dedicated to the city. And that's kind of how we've done them in the past.
Correct.
Is that we'll do that. So, but the note is on here, and that was the
That's the
importance.
anticipation of that.
The anticipation is that it will be given to us. And, but again, you know, with some projects, and whether it trails or parks, that, you know, they were going to be given to us. That was the full intent. And then it came to the point they weren't built to the standard. We didn't accept them. And it became part of, you know, that particular development's private.
Can't require that they come to that standard.
Well, that's what we do, is we require they come to that standard. But if it doesn't get built to that, we're not going to accept it. Does that make sense? It's like,
But then can we go back and tell them to bring it up to standard?
well, they'll have that choice. They always do. That's the whole point, is they'll try to get to that standard. And again, we've just had a few cases in the past that we waited until, we're not going to take that dedication until we accept it. So it'll show up on the plat as such, and we'll come back, you know, if it is, and then we'll just have that particular area given to you to accept as a dedication.
How do we trigger that happening? Who follows up on that to make sure that it?
Well, in this
when it's
particular case,
finished?
Barry has to approve it. Barry's, you know, will do that, and he'll, like I say, a lot of times he'll work with Sitla, because a lot of this property is theirs.
Okay.
And so Sitla and Barry get together, and Barry goes out and does a physical inspection of it, says, yes, we'll accept this, and then the dedication comes, and then you folks get that in a meeting. We just give you that,
Okay.
you know, the
Just
meets
wanna
and
make sure that
bounds
there
and the
is
legal description on it, and you
Process,
check
it
it.
doesn't fall through the cracks and never gets dedicated even. So that's.
No, it won't. Again, this is what has happened a lot in these particular, especially these PCDs with this area. So
Is this project that's right by that slide area off Telegraph?
it's well, it's not as close as that you know, there's homes you can see being built out toward the slide area. This was actually back towards, you know, the parkway in between there. I mean, here, let me just
It's actually right on.
It's a non-issue.
I'll kind of,
As far as the wash.
Hey, Drew, I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it Arenoso Drive? Arenoso? That's parking that goes along there, right?
here, let me, well, I just wanted to show you where this was, and then I'll pull that up. So to answer Councilman Nison's question, the slide, well, it's hard to see where the slide actually on this particular one, but project, you can kind of see. Slide half over here. It's a little way, there's a different subdivision in between, it's closer. And that particular other subdivision, the Arroyo, is the one that we lost some of the lots that we weren't going to be able to do. You know, we came back and did some amendments in Sienna Hills, and that's the area that we kind of lost some of it. But this one is just south of that park that you see. Let's get back. And that area is parking, yes.
So.
Again, this is a vacation rental.
No, I understand, but we're not showing additional parking near the pool or clubhouse.
No, we're not, and I don't know if that would be the wisest thing, since that is one of the main entrances coming in right there, having people back in and out of there. That could be.
No, I understand that, but whether it's this phase or the next phase, it's going to have to be figured to be somewhere close to it.
Like I say, this is additional parking right here. I guess I'm not sure what the question per se is. We have it here, and then in the next phase, you'll have some other additional parking. You'll see that's part of phase 2. That's with the project. But yeah, right in front of the pool and clubhouse.
I don't know of a pool clubhouse around the area that doesn't have some parking adjacent to it for people to park in, whether you lose lot 37 and create some parking there, or on the north side. But you got to have something close to it, because you're going to have people wanting to park over by that and not.
Or they'll be parking where they shouldn't be.
Or they're going to have friends, or it's guaranteed you're going to need some parking near that clubhouse.
Yeah.
Maybe Jim can speak to that.
The one thing, council, you want to remember, this is your final plan.
This is a finance. Thank you.
You've already approved the preliminary on this.
But.
And so it may be on your next phase that came into play.
I said whether it's this phase or the next phase.
Well, that's.
So why are the two phases together, phase 1 and phase 2?
Okay, well, I'll explain that real quick too. The phases are broken up into 2 because 30 lots are going to one home builder and 30 lots are going to another home builder.
Oh, okay.
And because of the water conservancy issues, for the 2 of them, it was easier to break it up and take care of that. It would have been all one thing, but that's the reason, is that you have 2 different developers. I mean, home builders are going to come in and take 30 lots each.
And those streets are private streets, so I assume
And they're private streets.
They can't park on those streets. Is that correct?
This one wasn't given that same note as the previous one, because these streets are a little bit different than the one we just looked at in the sides.
Wide, so
they're 34 wide. They just don't have sidewalks on them. So they're not that much smaller than our standard street, but just there's no sidewalks on them.
Jim's ready to get up, I think.
Originally, we didn't have parking stalls in front of it. There's some opposition, as Drew said. Jim Raines with Brennan Holdings. There was some opposition. Lester was concerned about traffic backing out by the entrance. The council prefers, I'm fine with the condition that I don't want to put anything direct in line with the thing. You can see the width of that's enough. I could put 3 on the right-hand side and 3 on the left-hand side and give you 6 parking stalls there. We're fine with it. It was just, we don't want to get caught between what one part of the city wants and what the other part of the city wants. If you want 6 parking stalls, you can make that condition on our approval, and before the plat's recorded, it'll show them. It's common area anyway, and the parking is common, so it doesn't really change the ownership of the plat at all.
How big is that clubhouse building?
I don't know the exact dimensions. It's the pool clubhouse area is 47, so 150 plus 45. It's over 200 feet wide, and it's over 20 and 15, so it's over just close to 100 feet deep. So the pool area is about 100 foot deep, a little over 100 foot deep by a little over 200 feet wide.
Well, so it's big enough somebody could have birthday parties, or they could have events, or they could do stuff like that.
The
My
one
only concern is 6 stalls probably seems a little thin for me. But
We're real heavy on our off-street parking. If you zoom out and you show both plats, there's over 30 stalls within 150 feet on that end, and there's more stalls on the other end. It's more, we don't see this, people, this is a very small, compact project. We don't see a lot of people getting in their car and driving 200 feet to the pool. If you're going to go to the pool, you're going to walk to the pool. But if you want to see, you can see all the parking we've got up there, plus the RV parking there along the wash. And over in the corner here, I don't have a pointer, but that is pulled. That's three pulled loose.
I remember that. Okay.
Pulled loose stalls for RV and parking too.
Well, if you could figure a couple stalls up front, I think
I can get I know the dimensions and looking at it, I can get 3 to 4 stalls each side. We get 6 to 8 stalls in there. And I think still keep Public Works happy. The only reason they're not there is because they didn't want them there. Again, I don't want to get caught in between this. If you want them, they're yours. And I'm fine you make the condition, just like the note on the plat at Planning Commission. We'll have the amendment, the change plat to do tomorrow morning.
Jim, could you talk to the trails just a second while you're there?
The trails similar to this situation. It's always been our intent, senseless intent, to dedicate that trail to the city. The Leisure Services Department prefers to walk and inspect the trails before they want them dedicated. This is the way they've done it in the past. We'd be more than happy to. It's easier for us to dedicate it with the plat because we don't have to do a separate instrument, but we're fine doing it under a separate instrument. So,
has there been a case where the city hasn't accepted a?
There was some debates. Aaron, I'm not going to make Aaron get up here and get mad when people make him come up to the podium, but I understand there's been some instances in the past when they built something less than a 10-foot AASHTO standard trail that the city decided they didn't want it. This is a 10-foot AASHTO trail. The construction drawings are submitted and meet that standard. We will hold our contractor to that standard. It'll be built.
That was my next question, was the width. Thank you.
It's 10 feet wide, paved bike. It's the same trail that runs along the park and goes all the way up. It's just continuing to that trail. It'd be silly to have this section
Yeah,
of
I was going
public.
to say, I mean, it only makes sense that it would.
Yeah.
finish
It's just the process that Leisure Services
Correct.
wants to follow.
No,
It's actually
I
a
can
little.
appreciate that. They just want to make sure that it's,
Oh,
that it does meet, we run into problems if it doesn't, and all of a sudden we've got it. And so I can see what.
And Mr. Coast, the Planning Commission had the same concerns, and I think it was appropriate that we added the plat to show our intention, so
Sure.
nobody's in doubt of what we're trying to do here.
Okay. Public Works had the concern about the parking. Do we need to hear from them so that we're saying the right thing about
I
the
don't
parking?
care.
Well, I think that they can work with Public Works, and I think that Councilman Belliston at least will see that part of the motion, I would anticipate, but if it doesn't work, obviously, if it's a safety factor, I would see that obviously we can't make them do something that's not safe.
And we'll put as many parking stalls in there that Public Works deems to be safe and adequate.
I think you can put.
I think we can get
I think
8.
you can keep it off the entry and put 3 or 4 per side.
I do
If you
too.
do that, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, and we're fine if that's a condition of the thing. We'll make that change. And I'll get with Lester and Mike in the morning. Figure out what
Any
works.
other discussions?
And council, remember about the trails, about from the standpoint of whether or not we accept them or they become ours and up to standard stuff. I mean, the reality is on a project this big, the credits and debits that are provided to parks impact fees and stuff are important. You get no credit even if we were to accept it, but they didn't bring the standard, you'd get no credit towards their impact fees. I mean, there's an incentive there on their end also to do it correctly.
Correct.
Yeah, it's never been any intention other than.
No, we've
make
got a
it
good
standard
contractor
trail.
there. It'll happen.
I'll make a motion that we approve the final plat for Ladera at Sienna Hills Phase 1, located approximately Redstone Road and Sandy Callis Drive, with the addition of the adding a couple of stalls adjacent to the clubhouse.
And those other
Or on the
conditions that were
clubhouse
noted.
common, and the other noted condition, yes.
Okay, motion by Councilman Belliston.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman.
Nice night.
Ellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Turk, aye. Item 11B, consideration to approve the final plat for Ladera at Sienna Hills Phase 2, located at approximately Redstone Road and Sandy Dallas Drive. Applicant Brennan Holdings, 200 LLC. This is the other side of it.
This will sound like a broken record. This is phase 2 of Ladera. This particular phase is proposing, again, 30 lots. The area coverage is a little bit different, 6.44 acres. Again, it's part of the Sienna Hills Master Plan Community, PCD. The preliminary plat was once again approved on the 28th of June earlier this year. Staff reviewed the proposed final plat, sees that it conforms to the approved preliminary plat. Planning Commission reviewed it at their September 6th meeting. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the final plat for Ladera at Sienna Hills Phase 2. And again, the extra note has already kind of been taken care of. The park, the trail has been added to the plat. It sounds like we're going to add another condition and to replace the one and keep a number 6 with adding some stalls. So that answer any questions that council might have.
Any questions or?
We don't need to motion the stalls in this one again, do we?
No, for the mere fact that I think you're covering those in your first phase.
Okay. Well, with no other discussion, I'm going to make a motion to approve the final plat for Ladera at Sienna Hills Phase 2, located at approximately Redstone Road and Sally Tallis Drive.
Motion for approval by Councilman Ivy.
Second.
Second by Councilman Belliston.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Nice night.
Turek, aye. Item 11C, consideration to approve the final plat.
I don't know if Mayor Nelson will talk to you about taking a couple minutes to update you on stuff in the Red Cliffs Desert Reserve.
Yeah, he did not.
Didn't he? What we had asked the council, if you don't want to do it tonight, we understand. Bob Brennan with Brennan Holdings is here. He's the largest private landowner in Red Cliffs Desert Reserve. He's made a proposal to keep that land in the reserve, which I'll let Bob go to you, but we need about 3 minutes. I think it's important you hear what's going on up there. There was the possibility that that land right above Green Springs would have came out of the reserve and become developable. And I think we've resolved that, so that won't. And we just, it's very important that why Bob's in town, that we take a couple minutes. Mayor Ken is going to let Bob
Or
take a minute.
maybe even if we just got it through via email, just that may even be
We're happy to do it either way.
That may be as good as anything, just to shoot an email out to the council. That way they're in the loop with it.
The only
Whatnot,
difficulty is it hasn't been noticed up.
Okay.
Correct, yeah,
However you
so-
want. If that's, you're more
but,
comfortable
yeah.
that way, we're fine. We'll send you an email. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. All righty, we're to item 11C, consideration to approve the final plat for Brio Phase 2A, located approximately Rialto Boulevard and Camino Bonito. Applicant Cole West, Reed Scout.
Interesting names in Brio. Get used to it. The applicant's requesting approval of the final plat. Again, it's stated for Brio Phase 2A. This particular phase is proposing 37 lots. The area covers 12.141 acres. The zoning, we're doing a lot of PCDs tonight. This is part of the Brio Planned Community Development PCD. And the preliminary plat for Brio subdivision was approved back on August 23rd, 2017. Staff's reviewed the requested proposal and it finds that the proposed final plat conforms to the approved preliminary plat. The Planning Commission reviewed it on their September 6th, 2017 meeting, and they unanimously recommended approval of the final plat for Brio Phase 2A to the City Council, and that's based on the findings subject to the conditions. And believe it or not, this one has just the standard 5 items on it, so there were no extra things for Brio 2A. So with that, I'll be more than glad to answer any question the council have on Brio 2A final plat.
Any questions on the final plat on this one?
Is this, and I'm sorry, I don't know, is this the plat where we had a number of people come in and indicate they'd been sold view lots? And
No,
fill
that
out?
was that was a
That'll
change
be
to the
your zoning thing that you're
that's
gonna.
coming up. Yeah, that'll be coming up a little later in the meeting.
This is north of that by up, and actually the side, if you look on the left-hand side of your TV screen, that's actually down into the
Goes down into
Mill
the gully.
Creek down in there. And so these lots will have that view down in there. This was some property, as you recall, they picked up from the Jensen Minor subdivision and added
is
it.
it
This
across
used to be a
from the-
straight
across
line.
from the Montessori?
Yeah, this is due east of the Montessori. And that's why that whole area over there was added. You can see that lot 208. If you take that line on the back of it, it used to go straight down and pick up. You can barely see a faint dotted line here at the bottom of 201. That used to be the old boundary for the PCD and for the subdivision. So it's nice that they were able to pick this up and add these. These will be some nice lots.
But
right there.
a lot of that's kind of dropping into that hill. They're not really extending the lot much, are they?
Well, some of them actually picked up. There was some good ground there before it drops too much. Really? They really did pick up a little bit there. So
They're pushing a lot of dirt over there. Do they do that before they get the final plat?
oh yeah, that's what a preliminary plat's all about.
We'll let 'em
Once you
start.
get approved for a preliminary plat, you're vested, as I like to say, blow and go on the subdivision, and just push the dirt and move it. And final plats is when you're getting close to wanting to get them recorded to start selling them. And so that's the process. Once they get preliminary plat, they're free to put in pipes, dig up, push dirt, do all that water, sewer, grading, everything associated with that. So.
Any other discussion?
No, I'll make a motion that we approve the final plat for Brio Phase 2A located at approximately Rialto Boulevard and Camino Bonito.
I'll second it.
Motion for approval by Councilman Belliston, seconded by Councilwoman Granger.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Nice and I.
Turek, aye. Item 11D, consideration to approve the final plat for Brio 3C located at approximately Blue Topaz Drive and Green Jade Drive. Applicant Co-West Homes, Reed Scout.
Thank you again. I think this is our final plat for the night, Brio Phase 3C. This particular phase of the subdivision, entire subdivision, is proposing 24 lots, and the area for coverage is 3.912 acres. The zoning at this particular location, again, is the Brio Planned Community Development. Just to enlighten you a little more, the Phase 3 part of Brio is the patio homes that they came and submitted to you as a change within the last year or so, and changed some of the homes because of the market was seeking those. This is part of that. The preliminary plat was approved back on the 23rd of August 2017. Staff's reviewed the request proposal and finds that the proposed final plat conforms to the approved preliminary plat. Planning Commission reviewed this at their September 20th meeting. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the final plat for Brio Phase 3C onto the City Council. And these, again, there was just the 5 standard conditions. Now, there was a little area that was talked about, and we talked about it in staff developer and Reed's here. I don't know if you found an answer, but you'll notice something a little different on the corner of lot 356. It's not rounded, it's a straight line. And so I was just curious, Reed, what did we find out about that?
So phase 3 got platted with that line in there, so we're just matching those.
Okay. Okay. And it's fine with us. These are private streets. We're not real concerned about it, but that was brought out, why the slanted line versus a curved line. And it's fine because, again, the association will own all the streets and everything in it. So
That'll drive your OCD residents crazy. You know that.
Yeah.
You don't round that off.
So if there was any abnormality to it, that was all that it was. We were just curious. And again, because it's a private street, we're not concerned about it. It ended up, it's, the private lots versus the private street that all of them will end up owning. So it sounds like it's because they wanted to do a little something different there with the handicap access on that particular corner.
Any other discussion? If not, I'll look for a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the final plat for Brio 3C located at approximately Blue Topaz Drive and Green Jade Drive.
Motion for approval by Councilman Belliston.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilman Ivy.
Nice night.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Turek, aye. Item 12A, a plat amendment.
Mayor Pro Tem, I didn't realize this was on here. I don't really have much conflict to declare, except for the fact that the party that purchased this ground, I have been doing some work for them. It's the Black Bear Diner Group.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, now it's so noted. Thank you. Item 12A, plat amendment, consideration to approve an amendment for the Sienna Hills Shopping Center, Phase 1, for the purpose of combining parcel G and parcel H into one lot located at approximately 1300 Hoodoo Way. Applicant Aaron Langston, Sitla.
Are you guys missing your exhibit?
Yes, we are.
That's okay. I've got a copy, luckily, and we'll just put it on the overhead. It's a real simple. I was wondering, I thought Denise, if you can go to Elmo. While that's warming up and coming up, I'll just get it. This is a pretty simple thing. We're here for a request and an application to amend the final plat of the Sienna Hills Shopping Center. There it is, Phase 1. This particular amendment request is basically to combine lots G and H into one lot. Again, this is in preparation for the Black Bear Diner. It's going to be on that entire block. I'll zoom in.
How come the two Maverick parcels didn't need to be combined? Just because they're not crossing property lines?
Yeah, they're not crossing property lines. They could have combined them, but the parcels are still owned by Sitla, and so they just decided not to worry about that. So, but because I have a building crossing over, generally I won't. That's the only reason we were needing this one to be done, because the building sits right in the middle of the parcel there. So that used to be lots G and H.
Sorry. I'm not familiar with these streets. Where is this located at?
You know where the Maverick is, out at Interchange? It's right just west of the Maverick.
Just west.
Yeah. So, in fact, if you go out there, there's a lot of people that leave cars and everything parked out there when they take off to work, or semi trucks or whatever. But it's
I like Black Bear.
But the Maverick.
There's
Yeah.
actually a great sign there that says coming soon. That was a great day to see that sign go up.
Since we're so close, I won't, because we're on Elmo, and I won't. Well, anyway, so the Maverick is right there where my finger is. So simply, we're eliminating the line in between those two parcels. So, and they also did add, this is an amended and extended. Over on that boundary, they picked up some property from UDOT. And so they're extending out the boundary on this particular subdivision right here on this east border out there. So that's the simple change on the Sienna Hills Shopping Center Phase 1. The Planning Commission reviewed the request on their September 6th meeting. They unanimously recommended approval of the amended final plat, and it should be amended and extended for Sienna Hills Shopping Center Phase 1. And there was one extra thing that we always add on an amended plat. It's item condition number 6, that any of the utilities that Public Works feels are going to need to be stubbed, they be stubbed at the original source, whether that be the sewer main or the water main or whatever it may be, that those be stubbed. There were some extra fire hydrants on this particular block, so to speak. They'll need to be stubbed.
So problem with an extra fire hydrant? Wow.
Well, normally we would say no, but when you have to maintain it and then flush it and all those things, it gets to be a burden on the maintenance side of it. But no, yeah, you would think that, the more the merrier.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wouldn't see that being too much of a problem personally,
but they do break down, unfortunately, over time, and it becomes a maintenance nightmare, I guess, on some of them. And because of the requirement to flush every hydrant X amount of time, that's just that much more water.
You're flushing one around the turn. It's like,
yeah. But it's just that extra water, we're in an
fire
area.
protection, I would think would be well worth it.
Yeah.
3 minutes of flushing the hydrant.
But we counted, I think, 12 of them within a certain area up there. It was
Got a good commercial
interesting.
area going.
Yeah.
Want to make sure it's protected.
Okay.
All right, back to council.
I move approval of the amendment for the Sienna Hills Shopping Center Phase 1 for the purpose of combining parcel G and parcel H into one lot at approximately 1300 Hoodoo Way, and for extending that Phase 1.
Thank you, Councilwoman Granger. Motion for approval.
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Nyson.
IVI.
Granger, aye.
I'm going to abstain from voting.
Okay.
Nice and I.
And Torek, aye. Item 13, ordinance. Consideration to approve a zone change request Z-17-26 to amend the Brio Plan Community Development by making changes to the site plan map, the land use legend table, and the verbiage in the project plan text. Request is located at approximately on the northwest corner of Buena Vista Boulevard and Main Street. Applicant Reed Scow, Jack Fisher Homes. This is the one that you had your public hearing on previous.
Yeah, so the 2-week holdover is now completed. The item's ready for city council action. Just briefly to let you know, the planning commission reviewed the request at their August 2nd meeting. The planning commission recommended approval unanimously of Z-17-26 for the change, amending portions of the Brio PCD project plan. That's based on the findings and the conditions below. And again, the two items were basically conceptual site plan amendment, the boundary extension. Number 2 was changing the verbiage in the zoning area that a church will be allowed as a conditional use within any land use shown in the conceptual site plan. And so that's basically it. They updated the streets that changed over a little over time that had to get tweaked because of design and drainage, et cetera. So that's why their maps got adjusted, and then adding the verbiage for a church to be a conditional anywhere within the project. So I'll answer any questions I can.
Questions for remembrances? It's been almost a month ago since we heard this one, so it's been a while.
There were a number of people at the hearing concerned about homes that they felt like they'd been sold, lots that were prime view lots, and paid extra for that. I don't know what the resolution of that is. I don't know if it's been resolved. I don't know if it's reflected in this document that it's been resolved, or if there is a resolution. It's not ours to make, certainly, but it is Brio's. And I'm wondering if you can give us any information about that.
I don't have any information due to the fact that those concerns didn't have anything to do with this application, unfortunately. Those areas were changed in a previous application. So you can invite the applicant up and feel free to do so. That's what I would do, but I have not heard of anything. But again, as per this application, it doesn't really go anyway.
What I recall of the discussion was that the few folks that did stand up and say, hey, we bought our house on this date. When we looked into it, the date that it was revised in that area predated when they purchased their lots, and it was more of a marketing thing with Brio. I don't know how we as a council can regulate somebody's marketing, or if a salesman feeds somebody a bad bill of good. It's
Well, in all reality,
the zone was in place prior to the purchase.
I see it more as a legal issue between the home buyer and Brio, because it was basically fraudulently presented to them and sold to them on fraudulent.
If it was, and we don't really know.
Well, according to what was presented to us, I mean, obviously the literature they had showed it one way, and changes have been made to that.
But
Used to that.
I guess I'm hoping as we continue to support Brio and their significant property holdings in our city, that we are hoping they're taking care of their commitments in our community, because those people are now part of our community. They're our citizens. And you're right, that is between them and the citizens, but I do think at least it's affecting me to some degree to see if there's been any resolution, because their marketing should reflect accurately what people see, and they were looking at an old.
I completely agree with that, and just want to mention going forward that we hope that those little bugs are ironed out, so that if there's a possibility that a view lot is indeed not going to be a view lot, that it's not presented that it is.
Well, the biggest concern that you see here that this application does represent is the fact that church being where it is, you look at those parcels, and really about the only place it's going to come down is where that was at. And so that's kind of where I was looking at. And if you recall, and many of you probably received emails after our meeting At least in my case, it was about a 50-50 split. Those that said, yeah, I'd rather look at a church than the back of a two-story townhome. And others said, I'd rather have a townhome or than a church being able to move there. So ultimately, I guess that's what I see as this decision really boils down to, is do we allow them to move that just through a CUP process versus an amendment process?
Well, I'm kind of irritated that we would have to answer to the public and say, I was sold a bad bill of goods by Brio. It's bothersome to me, but it doesn't, you know, any approval vote doesn't, it certainly is not an endorsement of bad marketing. I want them to know that.
Yeah, I think,
No, we're good.
I think it's a little bit more than a buyer beware situation. It's, you know, it goes beyond that. So they should maybe do some explanation to these residents.
Tag on to that, it's unfortunate that we get folks in quite often that were promised a certain lot, you know, not only here, but all over the city, unfortunately.
We get it all the
get
time, and it
We
makes
do.
everybody look bad. It makes us look bad. It makes them look bad. It wound up. It's
No.
not the way to do business.
No,
And Brio is a big enough of a development that they should be a partner with in the community and in the city. And if that's a marketing
Well, I
tool
don't,
there,
I
it's
don't,
the wrong marketing tool.
I don't know that we know for sure what both sides of those are, and we're certainly not going to judge that. We don't know. You know, Brio may have done things in a way that weren't reflected when we heard testimony. We just don't know, and they're going to have to resolve it with Brio. But I would, at least from the perspective of the city council, like to encourage Brio to resolve that quickly, because it has affected some of our opinions on the council. So
this basically says they can move the church into any zone with just a simple CUP.
Correct. Which is pretty much anywhere in our city. You know, churches can go anywhere that, you know,
So are they showing it?
that's a common thing throughout the city.
So that pink site down below showed, previous map showed commercial clinic. But if you go to the second map down, it shows church.
Did
you blow that up right off the entry there, behind the fire station?
Yeah.
Well, then as the discussion was had on doing it in the pink stuff to the west of that, the people that are backing up to it, that's not where they're talking about going. Is that correct?
Looks to me, I mean, and I don't know if they've been in contact, because I have not heard. We can invite them up to see. I would imagine if they're going to this point, maybe they have been in contact with, you know, a church coming into that particular area. So
You could do that, and maybe for your benefit, maybe Council Starkey had a little insight that may help with this, speaking to federal law and religious institutions and those and such. So maybe Council Starkey, it may save you some time.
Well, just one thing we need to remember, you know, a little bit like I'm not gonna say frustrated, but a little bit like we have to relearn, it seems, every year or so, that the schools in the state of Utah place their schools in any zone we have, and we can't regulate it out, plain and simple. They have to abide by certain standards, just construction standards and stuff, but otherwise that state law overrides our land use authority. And there's some really strong religious freedoms laws from the country, so federal laws regarding religious institutions and where they can be placed or not placed. And it's a little the same, and that is you can't draft or have ordinances that prevent a religious institution from where it decides to locate. It it still has to comply with building standards and those kind of things, but you can't simply say, well, this is, nobody really intended for there to be, which again would seem a little silly in our state. Nobody ever intended an LDS church to somehow go in a neighborhood. They do all the time, but if this were a synagogue or something else, it's that same principle. That is, you can't keep them out because it starts sounding like you're picking and choosing which churches you're going to allow to go into neighborhoods. So federal law is you really can't disallow it.
Well, there's a little bit of difference. Schools, they can use the eminent domain. They can require the sale of property. Churches can't. They buy private property.
Yeah. I think what he's saying though is you can't regulate where they go.
Yeah, they can
So
buy
what they're
the
saying
land.
is
No,
whether
you
we,
don't have to sell
whether
the
we
land
change
to
the
them.
verbiages
Yeah.
in this or not, they can move that church under the CUP process, whether we.
Wherever they can secure land.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's.
They just secure
Yeah,
land.
you can't- Yeah, you don't have to force them to buy the land. No, it's just like freedom of speech stuff. You can't force someone to sell their land out of freedom of speech to an adult business because it's a free speech issue. Private property can sell it to who they want to, but you can't not allow certain things such as religious institutions to be established.
It looks to me like they might be, hopefully, maybe getting 2 churches on this property. Now, we know that they're trying to relocate the one that's very close to us here. And the way the area is growing, I can see 2 of them up there very, very easily. If not 3 and 4, after the rest of the property is built out, so.
I don't have a problem with the application before us.
Any other discussion?
Are we gonna listen to?
Oh, I don't, like, you can bring them up if you want. I don't know that there's a need to for the mere fact of what we just heard. In reality, you can't. You don't put it in, it does nothing basically. I mean, they can still relocate if they want. But yeah, if you'd like to hear from them, absolutely.
That might be a different issue than what the frustration you guys are having from your citizens who are coming to you and saying they promised nothing to come. But
Our issue,
Yeah.
that issue
Yeah, this is
isn't ours to
different
resolve,
issue.
but I am wondering if it's been resolved.
Just no one thing. At some point, it would have been nice after all the years to realize that people weren't going to continue to come in and say, somebody told us that the tortoise fence was here, but because it just kept going
I'll
on.
never quit hearing
We
that.
continued hearing that as it moved on, and that was just unfortunate, but I know city council and sometimes staff took a large brunt of that, and we certainly had nothing to do with it.
Reed Scow, the applicant. I did meet after our meeting with our sales team, and they all said that they were never promised, sold a view lot down in there, because if you've been there, there's not any view lots.
Their lots are not view lots.
There is on the west side of the road. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. But where they're sitting and where they're facing, they said, when I went through and looked at the contracts, we don't have a single contract that anybody paid for a view lot in that area.
They didn't pay any more than somebody across the street that wasn't on the edge.
No.
You're talking with them and
Because I sat down with, because I was fairly upset when I heard that too. And I went down, they said, no, we have never represented any of those lots down there as view lots. We have never taken a dime for a view lot premium in that area.
We
And also-
certainly got a few emails otherwise, so you might want to have them go talk to the neighbors in
We will.
those houses and have that discussion.
And we're having a board of directors meeting next week. We can address that again too. And also last time, probably everybody's forgotten, that is a typo. It's supposed to be clinic and it says church. And I think I brought that up last time I was here. It was just a typo.
I must have missed it last time.
It says clinic instead of church?
Yes.
Oh, no, I was going to say, that wasn't brought to my attention because I've been operating under churches the whole time.
On the bottom side?
Oh, you're talking,
That
no, I'm
white
talking
piece?
about in the verbiage changing.
Right,
of it.
yeah.
On
That
this-
right there
on
is
this
just a
one it says
typo.
Church, but if you go back up to the table, it says.
No,
Clinic.
okay,
Clinic.
no, I'm just talking about in the verbiage that we're talking of changing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about, the way it's the land use.
Yeah. So that map would just.
I'm a picture guy. I can't read I have to read the pictures.
I can read, I'll have to.
All right. Paragraphs are hard.
All right, council, any other questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Thanks.
If not, I'll bring it back to you and look for a motion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the zone change request Z-17-26 to amend the Brio Plan Community Development by making changes to the site plan map, the land use legend table, and verbiage in the project plan text. The request is located approximately the northwest corner of Buena Vista Boulevard and Main Street.
Okay, motion for approval by Councilman Belliston,
I'll second that.
seconded by Councilman Ivy.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Night tonight.
Turek, aye. Item 14, public hearings. We are glad that you all stayed with us for this one. Item 14A is public hearing for consideration to approve a zone change request Z-1728 to change zoning designation from PCD Planned Community Development and OS Open Space to C2 Service Commercial located at approximately 1100 East Washington Parkway. Applicant Dean Terry.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting the zone of approximately 7.82 acres. It's kind of broken up in that area 1 and area 2. The area 1 is the part that is currently zoned PCD. It was part of the Sienna Hills development. This piece was, as stated to me by the applicant, Mr. Terry, he did a land exchange with Sitla. He ended up with that piece, and he gave up some other property that's up there in that shopping center area, that particular subdivision. So that was put into the PCD on the zoning. The open space portion is that area 2 that you see there, that is hashed in that light yellow. And so those are the 2 areas that we're talking about. Now, the area 3 is also owned by Mr. Terry, and it already is currently zoned C2. So with that said.
So the Sienna Hills map, and maybe this is a question for them, it shows that comes over. So maybe Aaron, I'm sure Aaron will come.
I know we have a couple different varying maps in there, and it's showing those differences on there. So we'll bring that up. Let's move forward, and then this is a public hearing, so we'll use that time for that. The request is to clean up the entire 34-acre parcel piece, turn it all to a C2 zoning for future commercial development by the owner. The general plan land use designation for the location is community commercial designation, and the surrounding zoning of the parcel is PCD to the north and east, R3 to the south, and C2, R3, and PUD to the west. Staff's reviewed the request of change, finds it conforms to the general plan zoning ordinance. Planning Commission reviewed this at their September 6th meeting. The Planning Commission, by a vote of 3-1, recommended denial of Z-17-28 for the zone change request from the open space and from Sienna Hills PCD to a proposed C2 zoning designation. And that motion was based on that the commissioners would rather see the zone change as a PUD commercial request, thus allowing the commissioners and the city council members to see the entire project design and layout. And again, that went on a 3-1 vote. Staff had recommended approval for the Planning Commission and had included the following findings in the staff report. I just wanted to have them as part of your report on that as well. I'll be glad to answer questions that you may have on this application.
Any questions for Mr. Ellerman?
I just want to pull up what I was. Is it Counts TV?
Yeah, I can bring up whatever. You just tell me whatever one you're. Here you go.
Hey, here we go. That's what I was talking about right there.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we'll get a little clarification through our public hearing process. All right, this is a public hearing. We will open the public hearing to anyone that would like to come and speak to this particular zone change request. All we would ask is that you state your name for the record as you come to the mic. Yep.
Aaron Langston with Sitla. I'd just like to bring to the council's attention during the public hearing from the Planning Commission side, I represented from Sitla that we were completely against the proposed zone change. And to clarify, there are kind of 2 different pieces of land there. There's the bigger piece and the smaller piece. Specifically, our contention was with the small piece. As Councilman Bellison pointed out, that particular piece is shown inside the Sienna Hills PCD. And so our contention was, I don't know that you can just do a simple zone change over the top of a planned community development and pull it out. So that was the contention that we had. Our obvious concerns with that. We put a lot of money and a lot of time and effort into the PCD. And we want to make sure that whatever development does take place on that property basically conforms to the same guidelines and specifications that we have in the PCD. So Mr. Terry and I got together and we have worked it out. We have now an agreement between Sitla and the Terry properties that they will be abiding by the conditions that we have set forth. So we are good from that. We feel comfortable that his development there would conform with what we have. So I don't know if you have questions for me. I do have one question for council. I don't expect an answer. If you have one, it would be great. If in fact that council does decide to approve this zone change, my question is, do I need to redo my Sienna Hills maps? Because in effect, this little piece would be carved out. So our maps would kind of be left a little bit inaccurate. I don't know if that's a concern to the council. If it is, then we would need to redo those. So
It wouldn't be a concern to me having to redo the maps at this point, but if you did a future amendment to the PCD, you'd want to clean it up at that point. Okay. I'd be fine with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know part of the discussion at the hearing was that with the small piece that's such a major entrance to a commercial area that the suggestion that be a commercial PUD is simply so that we have a look at what the design of that is going to look like, because it's on, it's an important piece to us in the look and feel of what's going on around there. And I know that's why the discussion occurred.
Okay, it's good information. Thank you.
Isn't that subject to CUP, whatever comes forward anyway, Drew?
Well, this one does border Washington Parkway, so this one probably definitely would, because on anything on Washington Parkway, Telegraph, and Buena Vista has to go through this.
Well, I'd also mention too, the discussion you just had with regards to the PCD, I mean, there's going to be rules associated with the PCD on that. And so it's a little bit different than just a normal, no?
Well, I'll have to say, when Maverick came in, there was no they came in and, I don't remember if they actually ended up before the council at all. Do you remember if you had it? I don't know. It might have, because it was over 5. I don't know if the building's 5,000 square feet. It is. Any commercial building in our city over 5,000 square feet. So that's a discussion.
Go ahead.
I'm Doug Terry. I represent Dean Terry and the Terry family, and we're requesting this change, and I'm just here to answer any questions. As Mr. Langston stated, the vote at the Planning Commission level, I think, was based in large part on the objection by Sitla. And those concerns have been addressed, and we have a binding agreement with Sitla that addresses those concerns, as Mr. Langston has indicated, that basically includes some restrictions that bring that property, the restrictions would more or less bring it in conformity with the other property that
PCD.
Exactly, that Sitla has. So,
Any questions from the applicant? Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so, but as you see it, the discussions between Terry developer and Sitla, you don't see an inconsistency, which again, I think that was a discussion in the Planning Commission
Right.
level, and why we're having it again here, and why the property owner who also what land, biggest portion of land right within that PCD. That's consistent with what the PCD's standards would be
We think
currently
so.
anyway?
At least the concerns that Sitla had, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Langston, and I would ask him to correct me if I misstate. I think if Dean and Mr. Langston have been able to get together and come to the agreement that they have now come to, the objection would not have been made at the Planning Commission level, and the vote would have been for approval. Recommend approval.
City Council, we'd like to keep the PCD, the standards within that.
Right,
PCD.
right.
We'd do like to keep those. I mean, that's an agreement with the city also. So
And that's
what I
the-
did want to make sure was, because again, when you have property owners within it, sometimes there's their own ombudsman.
Right.
And it's helpful to the city to make sure that they're
Well,
consistent. And it sounds like
That's what Sitla's done. Yeah.
that's, you guys are at least comfortable with that now, that it's not going to somehow shatter the standards that are in there, or at least to the extent that you had concerns before.
We feel comfortable now that the development they will be very close to the same standards that we have in the PCD.
Okay, I think that answered my question. I just want to make sure that was.
Can I ask, what are the standards? And I'm only asking this question because, maybe we can avoid this big one here. This PUD C zone. There are standards associated with the PCD. What are the standards that would pertain to this that are associated with?
Well, go ahead. You want to, Drew?
Some of the main concerns that we have.
Stepping back up to the mic. Some of the main concerns we had were just with like sign heights and so forth. So building heights was another one. We wanted to make sure that if we're, kind of restricting our users on our property to say you can't build above and beyond this, we don't want to have them just on the other side of the street just trumping us and going significantly higher and kind of downsizing our community. So we just wanted to say we have to both come in level-headed here.
So the agreement that we've entered
And
into
in
addresses both of
the original agreement too, and this predates me with Sitla. This goes back to like 2004, 2005, when Rick McBriar's name came up a bunch of times during the Planning Commission. But when Rick McBriar initiated this, he did require certain guidelines at that time, but they were not as clearly defined. It was more done with pictures. You have to do something like this or something like that. So when it comes down to actual development, we're wanting numbers. We're wanting to say you have to have this restriction in place. You can't go beyond this particular thing. So that's primarily where we were. It wasn't as much you have to abide by this color scheme or you can't do this type of a use. We didn't go that direction, but it was more with limitations.
I can say I've been in some very heated owner discussions with Mr. McBriar in the past about, I mean, more heated than usual from property owners within the same PCDs, and frankly from the opposite side. But that was the issue again, is that all of the property owners within the same PCD generally are complying with the standards that have been set for each other. As a city council, I think we like to have that. I think we like to feel like that's the way it's going to be too, because that's what we consider when they first decide to approve it. So,
And the reason I ask Councilwoman is just simply because of that, since it does govern by a PCD with certain standards there, we do already get a certain level of understanding on what the design is, because it matches up with the designs, the standards, I should say, not the design, but the standards of the PCD.
Well, it sounds like Sitla has their standards. A C2 allows certain standards. We're going to do a conditional use permit on this anyway, even if there's a PCD.
Majority of the buildings would be under
yeah,
conditional.
because there could be impact beyond what has been either already placed in our standards, our standards specifically, or within their PCD agreed upon standards. There still may be effects that go beyond that need to be mitigated, but that's probably why.
I know. Dean Terry, indicated at that meeting that it was going to be beautiful. That it, but we don't have any control over that.
Well, and remember,
language.
conditional uses, we don't determine beauty.
I know. It's in that.
We'll still see this as a preliminary plat. The motion was the desire to have the whole parcel in a PD commercial state, but you've got 34 plus acres that's already C2.
Yeah, the majority of it
And
is.
You know,
We're just trying to bring this to a piece.
Let me,
and the other 6.75 acres as well.
my name is Dean Terry. Let me just say this. Actually, settlers didn't ask for anything than what we don't want. We want to be beautiful. You know what I said? Aaron, I said, you have not offended me by asking this, and it's in writing, and it's signed by us, signed by them, the Attorney General's office, everybody. So we've got it in ironclad. So and we did before, and we just, like Aaron said, we've added to it. But we weren't offended with it. We're fine. We want to be a show place. And that's why Rick McBriar took pictures of the Holiday Inn and our landscaping and the Sunset Plaza Shopping Center, and they're in our agreement. Some of them are kind of dark though. But we have got some good pictures.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I don't have to explain by Rick McBride, he's regularly scolding me though.
Shh, we've heard enough Rick McBriar. Anybody else want to speak to us? If not, I'll bring it back to council for closing our public hearing.
I'll make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Motion for closure by Councilman Belliston.
And second.
Second by Councilman Ivy.
Knight and I.
Ellis and I.
Granger, aye.
IVI.
Turek, aye.
If I may, just let these good folks know it's a 2-week holding period.
Yeah.
If they'll make the decision 2 weeks from tonight.
Yeah,
So
we always, any of these types of decisions, we have the public hearing 2 weeks later. It gives us more opportunity to take input from the public out there. So if anybody still has input they'd like to give us, certainly email us, contact the council. Gives us a couple more weeks to digest things. Item 14B, a public hearing for consideration to approve a zone change request Z-17-29 to change zoning designation from A20 ag agricultural 20-acre lots and R115 single-family residential 15,000 square foot minimum lots to R112 single-family residential 12,000 square foot minimum lots located at approximately 3650 South 20 East. Applicant Afton Everett Trust.
How many acres is that?
the total acreage, I think I've got, it's in my report. 18.257.
It's right in the middle of the graphic.
Yeah, I knew it was on here, but I forgot. No, just go to your report, Drew. Trust yourself. That stated the
Just
app.
across from the new schools?
No, this is up.
South.
This is right. This is due west of Stonehenge. Here, let me.
Okay.
It might be easier to bring up the Google map in this particular case. That's it. Here, I'll just. It's basically this piece right here. This is Stonehenge. Treasure Valley is right below it. 3650 right on the top end. The applicant's requesting a change of zoning for 18.257 acres. As stated, the current zoning is RA or agricultural 20 acre and single family residential 15,000 square foot. It basically, I'll just turn the zoning on so you know where those are real quick. And you can see the 15 is kind of that whitish cream color. The green on the bottom half is the ag 20. So it basically splits the property, the two different current zones on it right now. Okay, does that help you kind of know where those are? And I'll take that off because it's probably more confusing seeing that on there. So, of course, the request is to go to the single family residential 12,000 square foot minimum or the R112 zoning designation. This is in hopes for developing a future residential development. The general plan designation for this particular 18 acres is under the low density residential, and that carries the two zones of R110 and R112 in it. And the dwelling per unit ratio is 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. The surrounding zoning to the parcel is A20 to the north, A20 and RA2 to the west, RA1 to the south, and that's a little confusing, is to the south, RA1 with the bonus density credit to it, which is Treasure Valley, and the R115 to the east, which is Stonehenge. Staff's reviewed the request and zone change and finds it conforms to the general plan and the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their September 6th meeting, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-17-29 for the zone change request from A20 and R115 to the proposed R112 zoning designation onto you, the City Council, as of course based on the findings in your report. I'll be glad to answer any questions that the council has on this particular zone change request.
Drew, can you tell me when the R115 zone change for the north 9 acres took place?
Before my time.
Before your time.
So
it's been a
before
long time.
06. I think if I remember right, or the little bit of history, and I could be wrong, is that it was hopefully going to be part of Stonehenge at one time, and it never did come to fruition that way when it finally came to putting the subdivision together, Stonehenge at the time. And so I can, we'll see how well. Sometimes this tells us, but it doesn't on this particular one. But knowing that it all came in, it looks like this zone change was done together. That's why I'm thinking that it was at that time. So it was probably in the early 2000s, 1, 2, 3, before Stonehenge was probably built, that the zone change then went forward. But this particular part did not get eventually.
2006 or 2007, I would guess.
Well, I know that your home and a few others were already built in 06 down there, so I think they were probably built in 04 and 5, and the zone change probably happened probably the year right before that. Generally is what happens. So I'm guessing 03 or 4.
Drew, I'm easily confused.
No, you're all right. What?
How come Treasure Valley is shown at RA1 on the zoning map?
Well, I just explained that. I probably sped through it too quick. You haven't had the opportunity, I think, to see a bonus density request. I think
Not
the
yet.
two of
We
you
haven't
have
had
not
one
seen
come in
one.
yet.
What we do, bonus density, again, I'm trying to be real quick. It's a base of 1 acre lots, but then you get credits for all the things you do. Treasure Valley built a park, tree-lined streets. They got that area that's off to the east side. It's kind of a walking path. It's part of our master trail system. They put that in with some landscaping. They did a few other, things. They've met with a variety of lot sizes to get their credits. That's why, it is a little confusing. I have appraisers call me all the time. Mr. Ellerman, I think there's a problem in your zone map. I've got this guy who lives on a 12,000 square foot lot and you're calling it RA1. And I have to explain all that. That has caused a little confusion, but that's what it
Kind of
is.
a cross between straight zoning and PUD then, basically.
It's in essence, it's kind of a hybrid PUD. The bonus density is absolutely, but you earn what you can get, and
I
that's
know we've
by
had
your choice.
Discussions on it, we just haven't gone.
Yeah.
Was the result of that the Treasure Valley Park? Is that what we got out of that?
Yes, that was one of the big things they got. That's a 50% increase, and that's hard to get. That's one of the biggest ones to get. So they went right away by putting that park in. They went from 1 dwelling per acre down to 2 dwellings per acre just by putting that park in across the whole project. That's a pretty steep increase, but that's what a park will do in a bonus density. So.
Any other discussions for Drew? If not, this is a public hearing. We'll open it up to the public, to any of you that would like to come and speak to this zone request change. Welcome to do so. Again, just remember to state your name for the record as you come to the podium. Seeing no one come forward, I'll come back to council for closure of the
Make a motion that we close the public hearing.
motion for
Second.
closure by Councilman Belliston, seconded by Councilwoman Granger.
IVI.
Granger, aye.
Bellis tonight.
Night's night.
Turek, aye. Again, this one will be heard again. We'll vote on this in 2 weeks. So we'd welcome any other input that others may have that are here, or those that may be watching, certainly you can still contact your councilman for the next couple of weeks and have discussions concerning that if you have concerns. Item.
You could have just taken off and gone to a movie.
Item 15, plans and policies. Consideration to approve an active transportation plan for Washington City. Public Works Department, Mr. Shaw. You say, maybe we just kind of preface this that we had this presentation a month ago.
Yeah, well, on August 8th, it was presented at your work session. We opened it up for public hearing, or not public hearing, but public input. We actually received no input on it, so we're back to council for approval of the plan. And so I will turn.
In the last couple of weeks, I know we didn't get any public input, but I've actually had a couple of people get hold of me saying, hey, we got to have a plan for bikes in this town.
Yeah, it's been on our internet, city's internet site, and the web address from to give us input in, and we've received none. So Tom Millar from Alta Planning is here to give you a condensed version of your PowerPoint, and I'll turn it over to Tom.
You know, it does seem like a next step is how do we make sure that our community knows that we're actually actively working on alternative forms of transportation.
It was funny. It was one of the parties that got hold of me, kind of dressed me down a little bit on the quality of the roads. And it turned out what they were saying, they said, well, it's great if you're driving in the lanes where the cars ride, but when you're over on the side, it's really rough. And come to find out, it's St. George's chip sealed roads. They don't like riding on it. So, well, come on over to Washington, ride our roads, you'll do better. But really, that's the gist of it was St. George's roads aren't nearly as well maintained as ours.
I have a great idea, Councilwoman Granger. I know that we are always looking for input from council members in our city newsletter. Might be a great opportunity.
Let's work on it together.
You know, the day after that we first heard this, I was going into St. George and I saw a poor fellow get hit by a car on his bike. I hope that's not a omen.
We're going to restart the computer just so that it identifies hopefully the projector. Give it a minute or so.
I do know that since we had this presentation, there were some of us that were in Salt Lake City and looked at the plan that's in place up there and said, I hope we don't make that same mistake.
Some of the stuff in downtown Salt Lake has created some challenges for the area. And I'm not supportive of going down that road here.
So our next step in this, after the plan's adopted, we'll actually be coming back with our construction design standards. And we'll be adopting some of these new cross sections in there. And then we'll probably immediately start going ahead with new developments and try planning some of this in with our new developments.
And Councilwoman, this is really the point that really it kind of the rubber hits the road at this point, is when we start getting into design standards, we start looking at, budgetary issues. That's when it really starts to come to fruition.
We got any money left in our RAP tax?
No.
Depends how cheap the city can build that park.
That's right.
Yes, it
They'll
does.
get that park.
I suggest that our next major expenditure in the RAP tax has to do something with implementing this plan, starting to. We have some active efforts.
Well, some of it, if developments are coming forward, they'll be required to incorporate it, and some of it is through regular maintenance.
That's
when
true.
they do the regular maintenance and restriping, they can restripe, and so it really is limited cost to implement. So
Yeah. My name is Tom Millar, M-I-L-L-A-R. So I will give a condensed version. Is there a time that you would like me to give the presentation in, because I can skip some parts that we've already heard? 30 seconds.
Well, I think that's the issue, though. I mean, what does the council need?
Well,
The worst mistake you always make is getting up to talk and then they don't approve it.
Right.
When you get it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I don't know if there's a time. I would just say, let's kind of hit the high points.
Okay.
And the council, if we have questions, we'll dive in a little deeper with you.
Okay.
For the public's public knowledge, we already went through this during workshop session fairly extensively.
Right.
So this is a restatement for a lot of things.
Yeah, and there were some things that I added in there that I felt were missing last time that I can touch on, because those might
That'd
be
be
things
great.
that you haven't seen before. So just to give a really brief overview of what the plan is and what it does, it is a long-range vision of what walking and bicycling will be in Washington City. We chose the following as the vision and goals and objectives of the plan. So the vision is that Washington City will improve its quality of life and collective health by creating and promoting an integrated bikeway, sidewalk, and trail system for transportation and recreation that will connect neighborhoods, places of work, and commercial centers. And then the goals that we identified as a committee, a steering committee, were 6. There was safety, funding, community-driven network planning and design, meaning relying on what Washington City residents have told us previously and what they want in the future as far as where things are going and what they look like. Education, as we mentioned, spreading the word on what this plan does, but also how to use the facilities that will be implemented. Connectivity, not just putting a particular facility, sidewalk, bike lane, trail in a random place, but doing it as part of a connected network. And then finally, operations and maintenance, not only making sure that we have policies and strategies in place, but that the design and planning of our infrastructure enhances the dollars that we have for maintenance and operations, and makes those dollars go farther. I shared this quote last time: "In God we trust, all others bring data." And I think that we did a great job as we put together the plan with Public Works and with Leisure Services and with our wonderful steering committee, which includes 2 members of, staff people of the health department. We've brought as much data as we can so that we identify the need, and then we identify the fixes for those needs and those deficiencies.
For my own curiosity's sake, who initiated the study of this? Was it council initiated on a prior council, staff initiated?
I don't believe it was necessarily council initiated. I think there's been something we have to talk about. I know we talked to previous council, but I think it was actually initiated with staff and George had this active transportation. Something that just seemed to.
Yeah, as I said, it came through kind of the MPO, St. George City, kind of came on through staff out of that.
Would have had to come to the council for funding though, right?
That was budgeted through the budget process.
And it was only partially funded by Washington City, another part from the health department, another part from the MPO. Yeah. And just to give some context, the MPO did do a regional active transportation plan about 3.5 years ago. And then since then, St. George has done a plan, Washington is doing a plan, and Hurricane is starting their plan this month. So we looked at what the existing system looks like. There are about 95 miles of trails and bike routes, and those are trails both paved and unpaved, totaling about 95 miles. But most of those miles are your off-street network, things that get you to parks and get you to schools, but might not get you to other destinations. And there is a sentiment in in planning for people walking and biking that if you just build trails, it's like building a road system with just freeways. It doesn't allow that permeability into your city, into the destinations that people need to get to, and doesn't provide the opportunities or as many opportunities to walk and bike transportation trips. So we tried in our recommendations to not only connect the existing system to those destinations, but also connect the existing system to itself where there were gaps. We looked at mode share, which is how many people are walking and biking currently. In Washington County, because the margin of error was a little too high just in Washington City. This is walking and biking to work. So in Washington County, it's about 3% walking or biking to work. Then we looked at all trips. We looked at the Utah Travel Survey, Utah Travel Study household survey, and it said that 6.8% of all trips, your school trips, your grocery store trips, your trips to the park, were done by walking and bicycling. So nearly 7%. And even though there's a high usage, only 2.3% of crashes have involved people walking and biking. So the usage is much higher than the rate of crashes and the safety risk of using those modes. And often people have brought that up in the survey. Something that keeps them from walking and biking is that perceived lack of comfort or safety. We analyzed the comfort of all roadways in Washington and found that 88% of road miles were theoretically comfortable for bicycling, but they were interrupted by these major barriers, these very large streets, perhaps without crossings to get from one neighborhood to the other or to access the street itself. So after we did that fact finding, we asked the public what they wanted and what they, how they felt, what they wanted the future system to look like. So we had about 570 people, 571 participate in the online survey. They also drew on an interactive map places that they'd like to see improved. So what we heard from them was that the barriers were that destinations were a little bit too far away, that the land use didn't support walking and bicycling as much as they'd like, that there weren't enough paths or infrastructure, that drivers were aggressive, and that intersections were particularly or felt particularly unsafe. And we asked people to identify what type of person they would consider themselves for bicycling, and about 60% said leisure. And again, this is your current users, not necessarily potential. 39% said that they were experienced, and 2% said that they were bicycling for commute purposes. And we like to ask this question because the responses usually vary greatly between what individuals, cities say and what nationwide surveys say. And the difference being that this survey was self-selecting, and national surveys that say that about 10% of the population is comfortable with walking or riding a bike, but the other 60 to 70% that wants to walk or ride a bike more often, that they're interested, but that they're concerned about their safety. So there's a huge latent demand of people that could be walking and biking a lot more than they are. And here are just a few quotes from that survey of what people told us that they liked and what they wanted to see improved. We did an event at Cotton Days, and about 100 people came by our booth and participated in the same way that our survey and map participants did. They drew on some maps, they did some games, and we took pictures of families that came by and included some quotes from them in the plan, and also incorporated their input into the recommendations map. So then we moved into the recommendations. We first started with programs and policies. And just to define what that is, we looked at the construction design standards. We looked at the design details. We looked at the city code. We looked at existing programs like SNAP programs and Safe Routes to School programs, and figured out ways to improve those or to recommend new programs and policies to improve walking and bicycling. I usually call these soft recommendations, in that they aren't necessarily shovels in the ground, moving dirt type of recommendations. They're things that support those types of facilities that are out there on the street. So here are some of the policies that we recommended: complete streets, automated counters to be able to tell who's using what where, a maintenance policy and best practices for how to maintain active transportation facilities, and then some programs, expanding Safe Routes to School, educational courses, community events, infrastructure condition evaluation, just to make sure that the system as it's being built out is being maintained and used safely and to the best of its ability. And I believe Councilman Ivy suggested or asked last time during the workshop how the city could help perhaps temper some of maybe potential backlash or potential misunderstanding of what bike lanes or new sidewalks or new trails would mean. So I took that recommendation to heart and have started a conversation between the health department, between UDOT, between Bike Utah, and between the Southern Utah Bicycle Alliance to be able to come up with some ideas on what programs could be effective going forward to educate the public, not only on the usage, but also the why and the why spend money on this kind of stuff. And so I'll send some of the results to that to Mike to be able to share with you later on. Then in chapter 4, the second to last chapter, we recommended new facilities, things that would happen in the future. And this total future system would include the existing mileage plus new mileage, and it would come out to about 224 total miles in the future after all of this has been built out over the 20-year time frame that this plan encompasses. The important thing to note about that, and there's the comparison to the existing system, but the important thing to note is that most of those new facilities, about 80% of the new bike lanes, the new trails, the new sidewalks, the new streets, would be designed as high comfort facilities, or facilities that are comfortable enough for you, Councilman Ivy, for your kids, for your grandkids, for anybody to use regardless of their skill level or their age or their ability. And that has been shown in studies nationwide and worldwide to increase the usage of a system, so that you aren't just building something and not seeing any usage, but so that you get those latent users out and driving less.
If the council set an example and started biking to the council meetings from now on, and Drew.
You belong to St. George's
Just borrow St. George's fleet of e-bikes. And
I'm happy to bike in.
Honda. A really fun thing that Bike Utah and the Wasatch Front Regional Council host about every other month are called mobile active transportation tours. And they allow a community or a group of communities that are next to each other to show off what they've done for walking and bicycling. And so they'll usually have at least a council member or a mayor involved, as well as a few staff. And they'll host about 20 or 25 people, and they'll show them around, and they'll have bikes rented, and they'll ride around the community and point out all of the great projects that they've been able to accomplish. So sort of like a mobile tour that you would do as part of a conference, but this focused specifically on walking and biking. And Bike Utah is the organization that helps organize those. So if you were interested in showing off the great things that Washington's already done, they organize about 5 or 6 of those a year. We did that same analysis of roadways in the future and saw that, yeah, before we had about 88% that were nice and connected to each other and comfortable, but remember they were divided by major roadways. So after all of the recommendations are implemented, we see a dramatic increase in the very, very most comfortable, going from 57% out of 88 originally up to 88, and then having a few percentage left over in that second most comfortable. What that means is that if right now 50% of Washington's roads are comfortable enough for kids to ride on by themselves. In the future, 88% of Washington's roads would be comfortable enough for kids to ride and walk by themselves. And that's obviously compared to the previous. A couple priority projects were included in the scope of the plan. Not that these are the first projects that are going to go in, but rather that these are some projects that needed some additional design guidance and perhaps some visualization. So here's an example of a buffered bike lane, paint buffered, on Telegraph. Here's an example of what the canal trail might look like in the south block of town. An example of what the 200 East Bicycle Boulevard might look like as it crosses a major road.
I think,
oh.
So, okay, it says recommendations. I mean, go back to Telegraph.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
My preference would be to try and, I don't know if we put bike lanes on a map and whatnot, but if people need to get from the south side of the freeway to the north side, direct them to Main Street rather than down to Telegraph. We already have enough of a problem to try and go restripe it. We're looking at ways to restripe and add lanes for cars, much less this.
Yeah.
I don't know that this is a recommendation that I'd want to see in this.
And the reason why we put it on Telegraph, and again, this goes back to the network discussion, is that the out of direction travel for a person walking or a person biking is orders of magnitude greater than it is for motor vehicles. Just to go down to Main Street and to cross to the north side of the freeway in a motor vehicle might only take 5 minutes, but it might take an hour or an hour and a half walking or bicycling. And so we provided some recommendations, yes, as connections between things, but we also provided some recommendations, including Telegraph, as a connection to a destination, not just a connection to another place, or not just as a way to get up to Green Spring or up to the north side of the freeway. For people going to Walmart, for people going to the restaurants, and being able to bike safely there and not have to bike on the sidewalk together with pedestrians.
I understand where you're going with it. I just know that we have other issues that are make it very challenging to actually implement.
Yeah, and the great thing about a plan, and this not being the end all be all decision time for what's going to go on which road, is that as needs change and as sentiments change or as traffic changes, then we can mold the plan to match the reality of when things are actually being implemented. But I understand.
I understand but once we adopt it, once we implement it, then what we're telling people is you have to design to this. I don't know. I kind of struggle with some of it.
Yeah, once we put that into our design standards,
right,
it would become that.
Any other questions on this project or on the other projects? This is Barry's pride and joy. And then the last one that I don't think that I showed previously was a bike lane on 300 East south of Telegraph.
I think that was important to get in because that one gets used on a regular basis by bikers.
Kids might use to go to school.
I don't know. The entire time I've been around, I don't think I can count on one hand how many times I've seen bicycles through the Telegraph Green Springs interchange.
And part of that is,
I take it back, with the exception of the sidewalk going there. But I mean, like road bicyclists, commuter bicyclists through there.
And the goal of the plan is not just to plan for the people who are currently biking and might feel a little uncomfortable, but to plan and design for the people who aren't or wouldn't consider it unless something was improved and a facility was in place for them to use.
I think that's your biggest problem there is exactly that. People wouldn't feel safe going through there, so they don't.
So they don't. Yeah.
And it is
Where are you
a
gonna
chicken and the
squeeze
egg
it?
discussion, and
I don't know where you're gonna squeeze the lanes in.
well, as we did all the recommendations, we measured every street that we provided recommendations on, and provided the widths that would need to be striped in order to accommodate the bicycle infrastructure or the trail or the sidewalk.
Some of the thought process out there, if you create the bicycle habitat, you may decrease some of your vehicle travel and turn it to bicycle travel. You may help yourself.
Which is the same idea of having a bus route. You'd reduce some of that.
Mm-hmm. And it is a chicken and the egg discussion, and there is, I mean, there's always a risk of what if nobody uses it, and perhaps the bike lane is not the magic bullet. Perhaps it's something else. It's another policy or another program, a software recommendation that helps people to be riding their bikes more and walking
They'll
more.
certainly get used, and they'll certainly get used through a lot of the areas of town.
Once it builds out and they see it, people start, when it becomes a little more, aware of it.
Mm-hmm. Moving into chapter 5, this is the final chapter, and it talks about not just what the recommendations are, but how do we build them? How do we fund them? How do we evaluate them once they're built, to analyze if people are actually using them, why they aren't using them if they aren't, or why they are using them, and what types of infrastructure are the most effective at getting people to walk and bike more often. So we prioritized each project through these criteria. I can zoom in on these perhaps. And they're based on the goals: safety, funding, community-driven network planning and design, and connectivity. And then we phased all of the projects in coordination with the TIP, so that they are 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, and 11 to 20 years. And they're also phased based on when those roadways would either be rebuilt or resurfaced or built in the first place. So that Project X, if it's built in 2020, doesn't have a phase that's different than what the Transportation Master Plan says for that street. So that when that street is being redone in 2020, that the bike and walk project is also a 2020 project here in the prioritization.
Well, that would certainly save us a lot of money to do.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that a lot of cities in Utah have begun to do is they've put in sidewalks and bike lanes, is basically follow the truck strategy of calling up Public Works or calling up Parks and saying, what are the 5 or 6 projects that you guys are doing next year? How can we plan for these projects? Perhaps they got moved up a couple of years or moved back a couple of years, and then being able to take advantage of the construction that's already going on and getting those facilities in. Some of the recommendations are maintenance recommendations for taking care of facilities and repairing things when they do break. And then we also did, at the recommendation of the city in our scope, an analysis of what the benefit would be after all of the facilities are in. And the benefit is estimated in 2017 dollars for between $4.6 and $10.2 million. That is over the cost of building out the entire network. And I mentioned this before, but this analysis was based on the existing data. And because the existing data has that high margin of error, we recommend also in the plan that this analysis be redone in about 5 years, when hopefully that user data is a little bit higher and more reliable. But if anything, the numbers are low and not artificially high, because it would be impossible for them to be artificially high, according to the data that we have. Then we put in some performance measures, again, to how to measure whether safety is being improved or ridership is being improved, how to enhance the comfort of the system, and also increase the reach of our education programs and recommendations. And then at the end of the plan, on the final pages, we provide about 30 different funding sources, both including and excluding city funds and sales tax and property taxes, that can be used for biking and walking projects. These include grants and direct funds from U.S. Department of Transportation, Utah Department of Transportation, RAP tax, bonds, Highway Safety Improvement Program, and so forth. Existing funds that are there, ready to be spent, ready to be applied for. And we break those down by municipal, county, state, and federal, and private, nonprofit, and corporate. So I showed these last time. These are what some similar communities are doing, and I'll just go through these really quick. Provo is redesigning their Bulldog Boulevard to be a bicycle and pedestrian corridor. They're also requiring a minimum sidewalk width of 6 feet. Tucson is investing in their non-major streets. They're parallel to major streets, and investing in trees and crossings of major intersections to make those more comfortable, really without having to provide too much infrastructure mid-block. Las Vegas, Clark County recently completed their regional plan, and it calls for about 1,100 new miles of bicycle infrastructure in the next 20 years. And again, similar to Washington's, about 70% of those new miles are high comfort facilities for all ages and abilities. And then St. George recently adopted their plan in January. They've begun to put up signage on street and off street for wayfinding for people walking and bicycling. They are striping bike lanes together with their 2017 pavement management activities. They're investigating bike share and mountain bike parks. A successful rescinding of the no wheels policy at Sunset Elementary. Again, the city e-bike fleet and their active transportation committee. And then I just wanted to finish on this slide about why walking and bicycling matter and what benefit they can have for Washington City, that it's not just the folks who are out there walking and biking right now, but for the untold thousands of Washington City residents who can enjoy these benefits and improve the city as well.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions from the council? Any further clarifications?
Just have a question for staff. How comfortable with the plan and rollout down the road and impact it's going to have on our maintenance and growth?
Well, I think we're very comfortable with it. I mean, we've been, hand in hand working through this and getting our ideas into the plan. So I think we're very comfortable with it.
Okay.
I was just going to indicate too that if we can get a local option road tax, this is one of the things that can assist with. We talked about that today with transit too. So that's still an important, I mean, the funding component is crucial to all of them. That's one of the areas that this can assist.
A lot of projects are going to be very inexpensive, especially when we do our slurry projects. It'll just basically be some restriping of roads, narrowing some lanes to fit in bike lanes. Those will be fairly easy for us to do at very minimal cost, because we'll be doing a slurry project with a striping on top of it. So it'll be just adding a little bit more striping.
The only real concern I have in it goes back to that on Telegraph and even the one on 200, when they're supportive of the plan as a whole. I'm supportive of redoing the design guidelines or the design standards in the city. But when you start putting, here's this spot, here's that spot, here's that spot, this is what we think, it kind of, in my mind, backs us into a corner a little bit, like, well, hey, you adopted that, now you got to do that. But that may not be the best decision for a redesign of 100 or Telegraph, for example. I just.
Yeah, well, for an example for Telegraph, the lane widths are very wide there, but there's not enough room to add another lane. And we've actually looked at what would adding lanes there do to us. It actually creates more of a problem at our intersection, because our turning times and our queuing times at the signal expands, because now we've added to the width of that road, and we have to take that time for a pedestrian to cross. That's what really affects that intersection. So even down the road, if we did want to add a lane there, we'd have to be buying right away anyway.
Well, and that's fine. It's just when it's in a document that we've adopted and it has specific recommendations for specific areas of town. And then there's the public that looks at that and says, how come you haven't done that yet?
Right.
How come you haven't done that yet? And it doesn't mean that we don't want to do that. It just means that now we've got something that we've adopted that we haven't performed on that gets people riled up over.
Right.
I'd rather just not have those specific recommendations in this and adopt the rest of the plan as a whole. Understanding that this is something that we need to be doing in the design standards. Does that make sense, Roger? You got the smile on me. Well, I told you earlier, I'm a pictures guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I understand a little bit, showing those recommendations here, but we have our whole list of recommendations that the plan has called out for our 20-year plan. It's kind of like our same thing that we do with the water
That may be the
water
case, but
master
As
plan.
soon as somebody downloads this and looks at it and says, you got a recommendation to have a bike lane down 300 East.
Right.
How come it's not there yet?
And we get the same thing like
You know.
with water tanks and lines. Well, I want to do this development, but you haven't built the water tank and it shows in your plan. How come you haven't done it? Because we haven't had our demand to build it yet. Or we haven't had funding available to build it yet.
But if
So,
Okay.
I mean, that
If
would
we handle
be,
it through the design standards and we handle it through the plan as a projected whole, but take those specific examples out, I'm more comfortable. That's all I'm
Yeah, some of that though, you've got to look at those routes, especially commuter routes. People want to commute through that. I mean, now
Well, I
whether, how you're able to do that, I don't know. I mean,
That's fine. I'm 100% supportive of doing something down 300, and if we can make it work at Telegraph, I'm supportive of that too. I just
so,
know we have a
so like
problem.
this page here, this is what you'd kind of like to take out.
It's the priority word, if it said,
Future
projects to be
recommendations,
considered
Telegraph
or
Street, take out
recommendations for
priority number
projects,
one, or
it's probably the priority and the numbers that are gonna.
How many of these do we have? We've got priority one Telegraph. What's the next one? Canal Trail. Go to the next one. 200. Next one.
300.
300 East. And are there any more? We got. I just think take those 4 slides out and I'm fine with it.
There's a reality. This is a connectivity issue. It's looking at here's
Correct.
a piece and here's a piece and piece, and how do we pull them together? And we've got some major challenges to pull those pieces together. These are connectivity issues,
that's exactly
I think.
it. Absolutely.
What about leaving the slides in and just saying recommended project and
For,
not leave
for
priority?
recommended projects for connectivity.
But we would have recommended, the recommendation is for the city-wide to start doing these as we restripe or re-roll out. It's not these 4 projects. And I don't want to get lost in the shuffle that, or I don't want people to look at it and think that, well, that one's not done yet. You guys aren't even sticking to your own plan. No.
My concern is to roll back just maybe to, I think, one slide, next slide.
The plan says that
So
we
like
need to
that
be
one.
doing things like this.
So like, again, we're looking at a design that's pretty radical.
It is.
Well, why don't we?
And I just get worried about the photo, or not photo, the image.
Their expectation.
Yeah, because then you go like Telegraph, because that's not even practical. Telegraph.
Well-
Well, the image right there that's not even practical, for right-hand turn lanes.
If you did
Yeah.
something along the lines of,
You can't put that there right now.
They go in with right-hand turn lanes. That's in the design standards. This is just kind of an image of, this is before the right-hand turn lane.
If
But
you
can
changed
have
it-
bike lanes with turn lanes.
Well, I think personally, the image is what throws it off. Because I don't think you can get a bike lane right now in Telegraph.
But I sense that Mike thinks we could, because we don't have room enough for another lane, so therefore we have room for something smaller, which is a bike lane. Am I reading that wrong?
Well, I mean, that's true. I think the safety has to be paramount. You got that right turn lane that backs out to all the way, you right kind of turn lane, that thing, all the way sometimes down to the car wash.
Mike, how about we do this?
We can do that. I think
about
we
we-
can eliminate those 4 slides.
Well, and the other thing is, go back to one of the slides. Why don't we rename it and say, proposed striping scenarios, and take the reference to Telegraph and priority project off?
mean, it's meant to be an example of how you restripe it, correct?
Mhm.
So let's show it as an example of ways to restripe or ways to redesign, and then the design guidelines will handle it.
Well, I would even take it, I think it's a recommendation because it's a connectivity. I think that they're saying this is a priority project, trying to get people to get onto bikes and begin to commute. If you don't do something there, you're not going to create what they're looking for. So that's what I think they're saying is, look, here's some priority projects for you to look at, of finding a way. If you want people to begin to commute, you got to make it safe for them to do so.
I don't disagree with it being a priority project. I just don't want to have it used as a way to say our public works or our council or whatever, we're not sticking to our own plan.
So here's the cross sections of the roads. I mean, we could eliminate those slides and just, because here's the cross sections without actually spelling out any roads or.
I think that's better. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Well, you can even have a place where you say connectivity issues under consideration. You could say connectivity to our commercial zones because of telegraph is a big deal. Okay, connectivity to some of our recreational areas is it really? It's a heavy priority. If I were going to ride a bike, I'd ride it to a recreational area. You know, I'd want to go down to the soccer fields or the canal trail if it ever gets done. Or okay, so I mean that. The devil's in the detail, and maybe that's not the specificity that we need, but if we don't have specificity, we don't have a plan.
Well, Councilman Bellison, you had a very good point with telegraph. We just slurried telegraph this last year.
Right.
We're
So we're 5 years out
five
from a new
at the
restripe.
very earliest, and that was a microsurface. We should get more life out of it. So we might be 6, 7 years out before we do a project where we'd be restriping that. So
I agree with
I
you.
understand
We
that.
need connectivity to these areas. We need to be pushing it. We needed the other. I just don't like a timeline or a priority put into something
That might be 7
that
years.
might
from
not
now.
be the priority of staff or public works.
Well, maybe we take away that's a priority. We just look at it and say, here are.
I'm fine leaving the slides in if they're possible scenarios or possible.
Well, I don't know that
sliding
you'd even have to do the slide thing because I think you've got it covered here. But I think that you do need to address some areas that are areas of concern that need to be addressed. Now, putting them into a timetable and say within 5 years, we're going to have that done, you back yourself into a corner. But I think that if we know, hey, we've got to have this a priority to try and get some connectivity through there somehow, then we begin to try and plan for it and figure out a way to make it happen.
We could even have a slide, a table that shows here are some major connectivity issues. Here are proposed reslurring timeframes when it fits that it might be something that we might could start working on. It's like, I don't want to lose sight of the expertise that's gone into the recommendation to help us with that issue.
Right. So,
I don't want
so
to
what we
lose it, but it's number one priority, telegraph, and we just reslurred. Probably not the number one priority in terms of when we can do it, but in terms of how important it is for us to get to our commercial zones, absolutely critical. Okay, but is it the first thing we're going to do? Probably not. So how do we reconcile? It sounds like the first thing we're going to do, and it's not the first thing we're going to do. So how do we voice that and don't lose the expertise that went into those recommendations without making it sound like something that it's not? And I think that's your concern.
Exactly.
So the way we've looked at it is that it's very simple for us to do it when we do slurry projects, and it's no extra additional cost. A little bit in striping. But one thing we did look about is when we do these projects, we need to make sure we're connecting points.
Sure.
We can't do, say we do 300 East, and we're only going to go from Telegraph to the bridge. We need to take it to 2000 South or take it all the way down the Field Road. So that's what we're looking at is when we look at our projects, we're going to try to do a bigger project to have a starting and ending points on it, not bits and pieces all over the city. That's how we have looked at it. Now, you know, Bronson, I got to give Bronson a lot of credit. This has been his baby. He's worked through this study. He's also the one that takes care of all the road maintenance. So this is kind of his baby he's working through. And he's very concerned that he wants to follow through on this project as well. So I think we got staff
It's
that.
fine to say that in this,
Staff on board.
that projects or that basically state that Public Works Department is going to roll these out through natural maintenance timeframes and
Yeah, I think that's
some
some
along those
verbiage,
lines. You
verbiage
understand
we
my
can put in.
concerns. I
Oh,
don't,
yeah.
you know, you
Yep.
guys can figure it out, I'm sure.
Yep, I think we can add that in. Yep.
Well, I'd like to say too, to Tom and the committee, what a wonderful group of very expert people have been pulled together along with your staff to try to make something significant happen for the city that can make a difference. Now, and which is everything we do, I suppose. But this is as futuring as we sometimes get in terms of its impact on the individual in the city. Okay.
Well, I have to say, going into this, I was really kind of opposed to it. I've never been a big bike lane fan. But after I got into it and, you know, with Tom's help and the different people and the health department, and, you know, they've been a great partner in this project. The committee we had is just a great citizen committee that we worked all through this together, and it's really brought me around to the understanding of it. And now I am in favor of it. So
I think the vast majority of the bike lanes and bike lane designs that I've seen are positive. Obviously, we've seen some screwy ones that we would like to avoid. But I look forward to see the design.
but if you actually see the numbers with Salt Lake, it's actually really impressive what they've done with their accident rates, and
It was interesting is we made special note of how many bikes we saw using it. What we see, 1,
2.
Yeah. It's like, wow, they put a lot of money in for nobody using those things.
Well, you know, we have sunshine.
Yeah, the one day up there was a little rainy.
It was still, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's bring it back. We're gonna look for some action from the council then. Is there other questions?
I was just going to say that we have a society that needs to be active. They need to be out moving and being healthy. I think in all of the history of time, I don't think that there's been a time that people are more on the couch. If there's lack of better word to say.
With respect to the agenda, it says consideration to approve. Does that mean we should table it and have it come back with some tweaks and then?
Oh, I don't know unless you want to approve it with those,
Let me-
with your verbiage
Yeah, let
that you've
me
given.
try a
the direction.
motion. I move approval and that we look at describing what our connectivity issues are, as opposed to having them be first, second, third, and fourth priorities, but we don't lose sight of what those serious issues are, and the priorities be a description of where we're going to start. That, like doing it when we do new development, the priorities look at where we're going to start, but we don't lose. We need a slide in there or in the program that talks about what our major connectivity issues are.
That was a long motion. Did you get all that?
But I said things
The
3 or
motion,
4
yeah.
times. Yeah.
The motion is that we approve the plan as it is.
I'll second.
Only we're going to take out the prioritization and just the verbiage will be changed to connectivity issues that need to be addressed.
There you go.
I'll second that.
Well done. sir.
Second by Councilman Belliston, the motion by Councilwoman Granger.
Granger, aye.
Bellison, aye.
Nice night.
Turek, aye. Thank you, council. Thank you, committee. Thank you, health department, and everybody that participated in that. Look
work.
forward to 5 and 10 years down the road to what comes to fruition because of that plan. It'll be
You know,
a
I
lot of fun.
remember my first bike ride. New superintendent, they wanted to ride from Diamond Valley down to the district office. And I hadn't been on a bike in 50 years. And they put me in a bike that had things on it. They kept my feet in it. And you know what that road's like going down? Well, I fell.
Oh,
you know, in one of those, yeah, okay, it was not my best experience.
I was aboard the bike for 10 years, and now my 12-year-old honking at council night and because he's going too slow to the bike.
Now, we'll see when
All right.
the council starts riding
We're going to
bikes.
move along to council report of our officers from assigned committees. Anybody have anything to report from their committees?
Yeah, I'm on the solid waste board, and they have been awarded a world-class landfill facility. And so we went out and showed them some recommendation for it, and they took us out and did a tour of the landfill and the steps that it takes to make sure that they mitigate all of the landfill related type of an issues with, methane and decomp and wind and smells and all that. It was pretty interesting. Good deal. But they got a pretty significant award for the efforts that they have going out there. So
Great.
And I would just,
world-class landfill facility, I think is how they termed it.
The term of the award.
Terminology.
Great.
and at the community center next Monday is our Washington City night from 5 to 8, where we'll showcase city services.
Always a fun night. Don't they usually have hot dogs and?
This is my first one, so.
Yeah, they usually have hot dogs and a good time for the family as
Yeah.
well as they get a chance to interact with our departments there. So
Yeah, look forward to that.
great.
I'm on the mosquito abatement, and there has been a little more West Nile hits this year than last year. And there's been no human cases though yet. But anyway, they're starting to wind down their season, of course, this time of year.
Thank you, Councilman. Sounds like we need more fish and more ponds. We learned earlier tonight. Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, we'll look to our city manager for city manager report.
Just a couple of projects I'll update you on quickly. We've done the treatment plant upgrade, not any expansion or that, but just new filters installed, which increased our production about 50%. And this is important because that raw water in our production keeps that cheaper for us than the treated water through the district. 1100 East trunk line, which is important to me because I can't get to my grandson very easy. It's about 50% complete, so we still got a ways on that. These two phases on the stormwater, the 200 and 200, I think, right? They're about 50% completed as well on both of those. We're of course doing a warrant study on the 3090 South Washington Fields Road, and that should be completed the first week of October. We are working with the with CITLA on the Washington Parkway. So this is the Washington Parkway up Green Springs area dedication plat. So again, we're making progress along that route. As you heard, we're continuing to bid out the project on the Parkway substation, and you'll start to see some work. This is a great. I mean, our power department also is doing just a great job. We're going to be starting reconductoring on the Buena Vista line. That's an underground line, but wires in, and we kind of held off on that until temperatures came down, load comes down, so that we can shift load around a little bit pretty easy. But we've been prepared to do that, and that'll just upgrade that conductor size to handle load, and that's the big issue. And then Barry and I met with Ball Ventures, who is the property owner on the west side of the boilers. If you've seen the flags out there, that's not been all staked as far as where our property is, where theirs is, where we want to line that road up to tie in with an intersection on Mill Creek Springs. So we met with Ball Ventures. They came down from Idaho. And so we're just working on the land swap. There's a little bit of a net difference to their benefit, and we're just working that out a little bit. So to make it, and then we'll bring it back to council to discuss. And I think other than that.
Anybody have any questions for the manager?
Just make a motion for adjournment.
Motion's been made for adjournment by Councilman Belliston.
Second.
Second by Councilman Nyson. Do I hear any opposed? Nope. Let's go.
Mike, you and Roger have just a second.
You know, you need to think about that if we have a second.
I may, Tom, so thank you. I hope you feel okay with those changes, but they approved it.
Because it makes it sound like
First, it makes it sound like first. Yeah, and that's not quite true.
it's really just the verbiage that we used. That Public Works used when they were all the site tasks, one of the tasks